A world forgotten. Hidden beneath our feet lies a world that has been lost to memory, a realm etched in stone, interred in silence, and obscured by the passage of time. Periodically, the Earth reveals its secrets, and these discoveries overturn everything we thought we knew. Consider an ancient metropolis with no known name, skeletal remains that contradict our established chronology, or a tool too sophisticated for the hands that supposedly employed it. Who were these historical inhabitants? What knowledge did they possess? And why does such a significant portion of their narrative appear to have been intentionally concealed? For every discovered temple, countless inquiries emerge from the ruins. Were these individuals simply rudimentary builders, or were they keepers of forgotten wisdom? The answers exist in scattered fragments, inscribed on tablets, enclosed within ruins, dispersed across arid landscapes and dense forests. However, these are more than mere artifacts. They are communications, whispers from the past inviting us to listen. So, settle back, relax, and let's delve into the most peculiar and astonishing archaeological findings that science still struggles to comprehend. Facts that blur the distinction between historical accounts and something far more enigmatic. The enigma of Pumapunku. High on the windswept plateaus of Bolivia, where the peaks of the Andes ascend towards the sky and the horizon seems boundless, exists a site that defies straightforward interpretation. Here, amidst the cracked ground and the thin mountain atmosphere, the remnants of Pumapunku stand in silent defiance of time. Sun-bleached megaliths, some weighing over 100 tons, lie scattered across the terrain as if they were fragments of a long-forgotten puzzle. These are not typical ruins. They bear witness to precision, intentionality, and a mastery of stone craftsmanship that appears implausible for a period more than a millennium ago. Pumapunku is integrated within the larger Tiwanaku ceremonial complex, believed to have flourished between approximately 500 and 1000 AD. Nevertheless, the structures of Pumapunku are distinct, not only in their architectural style, but also in their inherent mystery. Initially, the stones might seem haphazardly displaced by time, but upon closer inspection, a different perspective emerges. One of engineering sophistication rarely observed in pre-Columbian South America. Enormous stones are sculpted with perfectly level surfaces, precise right angles, and cylindrical boreholes resembling those created by drills. Some pieces interlock with complex three-dimensional forms, suggesting they were once components of a more extensive mechanical system. The fundamental question is, how was this achieved? The Tiwanaku civilization lacked a known written language, wheeled transportation, and metal tools capable of cutting stone with such exactness. Furthermore, the granite and diorite utilized at Pumapunku are among the most durable materials on Earth, surpassing the hardness of iron. According to conventional archaeology, these people relied on stone hammers and basic implements, often employing abrasive techniques. But this explanation struggles to account for the symmetrical design, the polished surfaces, and the almost machine-like uniformity evident in numerous blocks. Certain cuts appear so sharp and precise that even contemporary engineers express admiration. Is it possible that we have underestimated the capabilities of the Tiwanaku people? Could a more profound level of their expertise have been lost to history? Or was Pumapunku the creation of a culture even older, perhaps one that had long vanished by the time the Tiwanaku arrived? The most recognizable features of the site are the H-shaped blocks, numerous examples of which exhibit identical designs and are aligned with remarkable accuracy. Some archaeologists hypothesize that these elements formed part of a large platform, potentially an ancient gateway. Others have proposed they functioned as structural connectors for a roof or wall system, characterized by modularity, mathematical precision, and intentional design. It is undeniable that their construction necessitated advanced planning and a deep understanding of geometry. Yet no architectural plans, instructions, or evidence of how the stones were transported, elevated, or positioned remain. Some of these pieces weigh as much as 130 tons. The likely source quarry for these stones is located over 50 kilometers away, across challenging terrain in high-altitude valleys. How were they moved? Were they rolled on logs, floated on rafts, dragged by large teams of laborers? Every hypothesis seems inadequate when confronted with the sheer magnitude and precision of the work. This is the point at which the enigma shifts from the historical to the realm of speculation. Some posit that Pumapunku could be a vestige of a far older civilization, one that existed prior to the Tiwanaku, even before recorded Andean history, a civilization possessing technologies or techniques that are now completely unknown. Others venture further, suggesting influences from travelers from distant lands, submerged continents, or even extraterrestrial origins. While such theories often extend beyond the available evidence, they highlight the profound mystery at the core of Pumapunku. The stones challenge our understanding of ancient human capabilities, of what is achievable without industrial tools, and of the inherent fragility of historical narratives. There are those who perceive Pumapunku merely as ruins, collapsed temples, fragmented ceremonial areas, but others discern a hidden code, a message inscribed in stone, one that we are only beginning to decipher. Could the layout of the site conceal astronomical alignments? Might the proportions of the blocks embody lost mathematical knowledge? And what prompted the abrupt abandonment of the site? Was it the result of military conquest, climate change, a sudden breakdown of social order? Or was there something more, an event lost to the mists of time, interred in the silence of the Andes? Even as archaeologists continue their investigations at the site, the most fundamental questions persist without resolution. Who were the builders of Pumapunku? How did they shape its seemingly impossible stones? And why does it appear so deliberately incomplete, like a partially revealed blueprint, a vision that was never fully realized? Today, the stones lie exposed beneath the vast sky, weathered by the wind, touched by frost, and still awaiting explanation. Visitors traverse the site with a sense of reverence, at times with disbelief. They touch the smooth surfaces of the megaliths, trace the sharp angles, and peer into the mysterious notches and grooves. And perhaps that is the enduring power of Pumapunku. Not only what it displays, but also what it conceals. For if these stones genuinely defy the capabilities of the tools we attribute to their creators, if their precision surpasses what we believed ancient people were capable of, then what else might be missing from our understanding? What other chapters of history lie buried, not by chance, but by deliberate design? Pumapunku remains, a silent sentinel, its stones whispering to the wind, its secrets still firmly held, unyielding, unanswered, incomplete. Tutankhamun's Meteorite Dagger. As we depart from the stone enigmas of Pumapunku, we journey across vast spans of time and space, exchanging the windswept plains of the Andes for the golden sands of ancient Egypt. Here, beneath the intense sun and within the shadows cast by monumental temples, the burial chambers of pharaohs recount stories long interred. Among these, none is more captivating than that of the young king Tutankhamun. His tomb, discovered in 1922 within the Valley of the Kings, was a repository of treasures, chariots, sculptures, and golden mass. However, quietly positioned among these opulent items was a singular object, significantly smaller, yet perhaps far more extraordinary. A dagger, simple in form, exquisitely crafted, found resting alongside the mummified body of the young pharaoh. Initially, it appeared to be merely another item included for the afterlife, a royal symbol. But this particular blade would subsequently ignite decades of scholarly debate, analysis, and speculation. This is because Tutankhamun's dagger was not fashioned from terrestrial metal. It was crafted from a substance that descended from the cosmos. In contrast to the majority of ancient Egyptian tools and weapons, which were made from copper, bronze, or gold, this blade exhibited none of the typical signs of corrosion. It resisted deterioration, and its surface displayed a subtle shimmer in the light. When scientists eventually analyzed its composition, they were astonished to find elevated levels of nickel and cobalt, a clear indication of meteoritic iron. This was not simply iron extracted from the earth. It originated from a meteorite. The dagger was, quite literally, forged from the remnants of a star that had fallen to earth. But how could ancient Egyptians, living in the 14th century BC, have been aware of this material? And how were they able to work with a metal as rare and challenging as meteorite iron, which necessitates intense heat and considerable skill to shape? Centuries before the development of iron smelting techniques, For many decades, archaeologists were perplexed by this anomaly. In their writings, the ancient Egyptians referred to a substance they called iron from the sky, a poetic phrase that many had presumed was metaphorical. However, the discovery of Tutankhamun's dagger lends a chillingly literal interpretation to this phrase. It suggests that the Egyptians not only recognized meteorites, but also held them in high esteem, revered them, perhaps even believing they were divine gifts from the gods. Consider the symbolic significance. A weapon forged from celestial material, placed in the hands of a king destined to rule in the afterlife. Was the dagger solely for ceremonial purposes? Or did it hold a deeper meaning? Did it symbolize divine authority, a connection to something greater, something cosmic? And if this single dagger has survived the ravages of time, how many others may have perished due to decay? How many artifacts forged from stars might have once existed, later melted down, repurposed, or buried beyond discovery? Mainstream Egyptology acknowledges that meteoritic iron was occasionally used in the ancient world. Nevertheless, the expertise required to work it was immense. It is brittle and challenging to shape. To produce a blade of such fine craftsmanship, balance, and durability suggests a level of skill that should not have been present in that era, or at least not with such precision. Some researchers have proposed that the dagger may have been a diplomatic gift, perhaps from kingdoms like Mitanni or the Hittites, cultures known for their metallurgical knowledge. Others contend that it must have been crafted by local artisans possessing skills that are now lost. Regardless, its presence in the tomb of Tutankhamun, who died so young and so unexpectedly, adds another layer of mystery. Why this particular weapon? Why this specific material? And where precisely did the iron originate? In 2016, researchers were able to trace its probable source to a particular meteorite, the Karga meteorite, discovered near the Red Sea. Its elemental composition aligns almost perfectly with that of the blade. If this finding is accurate, it implies that the Egyptians not only collected meteorites, but also possibly tracked the locations of their impacts. Did they witness these celestial objects falling? Did they search the desert for them? What narratives did they share about these sky stones blazing across the heavens and crashing into the earth? In ancient Egypt, the boundary between the earthly realm and the divine was perceived as permeable. The cosmos was not regarded as a cold void, but as a domain inhabited by gods, spirits, and governed by eternal cycles. Is it possible that objects originating from the stars, rare, enigmatic, and seemingly indestructible, were viewed as tangible fragments of that divine realm? And if so, how many other sacred items might have celestial origins that we have overlooked? Today, Tutankhamun's meteorite dagger is securely displayed behind glass, admired by millions but fully understood by very few. It resides in the Egyptian Museum, not merely as a relic of a long-deceased monarch, but as a silent challenge to our preconceived notions, a reminder that ancient peoples may have directed their attention not solely towards the Nile, but also towards the celestial expanse. Was the dagger simply a symbol of royal status? Or was it something more? A key to a forgotten comprehension of the heavens? Did the ancients possess knowledge that surpasses our current understanding? Or are we just now beginning to formulate the appropriate questions? Because within that blade resides something extraordinary. Not merely iron, but enigma. Not merely craftsmanship, but insight. And in that silence, resting within a glass enclosure, it continues to prompt us to gaze upward, to contemplate, and to recall that at times the answers we seek descend from above. The subterranean city of Derinkuyu. As we move from the golden artifacts of a young pharaoh to the silent stones of Anatolia, the mystery undergoes a transformation, this time located beneath our feet. In the central region of Turkey, beneath the sun-drenched plateaus of Cappadocia, lies a site unlike any other, a landscape shaped by the forces of wind and volcanoes, where soft volcanic rock has sculpted twisting valleys, conical hills, and distinctive fairy tale chimneys. However, the most astounding structures in this area are not found above ground. They are concealed far below, in darkness and silence. According to popular accounts, the discovery began with a routine renovation project. In 1963, a man in the small town of Derinkuyu decided to demolish a wall in his basement, expecting to find nothing more than another layer of stone. Instead, he uncovered a narrow passage, a dark corridor descending into the earth, which seemed to lead either nowhere or everywhere. What he had stumbled upon was the initial chamber of one of the most perplexing archaeological finds of the 20th century, a vast, multi-level subterranean city. This immense ancient complex was interred in complete secrecy beneath an unsuspecting town. And this was not merely a natural cave. What lay beneath was a remarkable feat of engineering, encompassing halls, tunnels, wells, storage areas, stables, chapels, and intricate ventilation systems. A self-sufficient city carved into the very rock, Derinkuyu. Over time, archaeologists have unearthed 18 distinct levels, extending downwards more than 280 feet into the earth. Although not all levels are currently accessible, the sheer scale of the complex is astonishing. It is estimated to have accommodated between 20,000 and 30,000 inhabitants at its peak, along with their livestock and provisions. Carved into soft, volcanic tuff, the various rooms are interconnected through a labyrinthine network of passageways, some of which are barely wide enough for a single individual to pass through. Entire sections could be sealed off by massive rolling stone doors, designed to be operated only from the interior. Who constructed this subterranean world, and for what purpose? Mainstream archaeological interpretations attribute the construction of Derinkuyu to the Phrygians, or perhaps early Christians seeking refuge from Roman persecution. Later, it may have been expanded by the Byzantines as a sanctuary during Arab raids. However, this proposed timeline presents certain challenges. The intricate nature of the design, the sheer magnitude of the excavation, and the precision evident in the architecture suggest origins that are significantly older. Some researchers propose that the initial phases of construction could date back as far as 2000 BC or even earlier. If this is the case, it implies that Derinkuyu has existed beneath Cappadocia for nearly 4,000 years without collapsing and without being rediscovered until recently. This raises a disturbing question. What kind of threat would necessitate an entire population retreating underground? What force would compel humans to abandon the open world and instead inhabit subterranean spaces like specters? Was it warfare, climate collapse, a prolonged volcanic winter? Some believe Derinkuyu served as a sanctuary built to evade hostile invaders. Others suggest it may have provided shelter from environmental factors, perhaps a protracted natural disaster, or even celestial events preserved in ancient folklore. The architectural design supports the concept of long-term occupation. Freshwater wells were dug sufficiently deep to remain unaffected by surface contamination or siege. Ventilation shafts draw air from above, many of which are still functional today. Storage areas exhibit traces of grains and olive oil. The presence of wine presses and kitchens indicates that domestic life thrived here, even in the absence of daylight. There were even educational spaces and religious structures. However, there are also more perplexing details. The tunnels are intentionally narrow, compelling any intruder to proceed in single file. Some shafts descend in a spiraling manner, creating a sense of steepness and disorientation. In numerous sections, the stone doors are strategically positioned at choke points, allowing defenders to seal off entire areas with a single push. There is a clear military logic embedded within the layout, designed for defense and survival, and yet no historical records from that period mention its existence. No inscriptions identify its builders, no texts describe its function. It is as though the city was intended to be forgotten. Some have put forth more daring speculations, suggesting that Derinkuyu may predate even the known civilizations of Anatolia, that it was part of an extensive network of subterranean settlements throughout the region, possibly numbering in the tens or even hundreds, interconnected by concealed corridors that spread beneath Cappadocia like veins. Was there a distant time when humanity chose to inhabit the underground, not as a refuge but as their primary dwelling place? Others have pursued this idea further, referencing accounts of cataclysms, ancient conflicts, or vanished cultures that constructed downwards rather than upwards. Fringe theories are abundant, ranging from discussions of ancient technology to the notion of remnants from Atlantis-like civilizations. While the evidence supporting such claims is limited, the sheer enigma surrounding Derinkuyu allows for a sense of wonder. Nevertheless, despite extensive exploration, only a fraction of the city has been fully excavated. Much remains sealed, either too unstable or too hazardous to uncover. Some chambers contain air that has been undisturbed for centuries. Some passages terminate in impenetrable darkness. We do not yet know the true extent of its depth. What secrets lie hidden behind the unopened stone doors? What historical narratives still lie dormant in the silence? Today, visitors are permitted to explore the upper levels, guided by artificial light, gazing into chambers that once accommodated entire communities. But beneath these footsteps, deeper levels remain untouched, undisturbed, as if in anticipation. Derinkuyu does not assert its mystery loudly. It resonates subtly through the cool air, the hollow stone, and the unanswered questions. Who sculpted this city into the earth? What prompted them to retreat underground? And what, if anything, were they concealing? Perhaps it was fear, perhaps it was wisdom, or perhaps, just perhaps, it was something we have yet to comprehend. China's White Pyramid. As we emerge from the cool, shadowed depths of Derinkuyu, we step not into direct sunlight, but into an atmosphere of secrecy. Thousands of miles to the east, in the expansive Shanxi province of China, an enigma rises from the earth. However, it does not command attention. It does not gleam like gold or whisper like buried ruins. Instead, it waits, half forgotten, partially concealed, beneath a covering of soil, trees, and silence. Amidst the undulating hills near the ancient city of Xi'an lies a structure of such immense size and geometrical precision that early Western observers initially doubted its existence. A pyramid, not of Egypt, but of China. One so vast that when American aviators first spotted it in the 1940s, they reported it as being larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza, a colossal monument shrouded not only in vegetation, but also in official reticence. This is the structure known as the White Pyramid of China. And if its description is accurate, it would rank among the largest human-made edifices in history. Yet few individuals have witnessed it firsthand, and even fewer have conducted studies of it. It appears only briefly in old grainy photographs taken from an aircraft, subsequently receding into rumor and confidentiality. However, this is not merely a matter of legend. The Qinling region of China is home to numerous ancient burial mounds, many of which are known, some mapped, and a few inaccessible to the public. The most renowned among these is the tomb of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, famously surrounded by the Terracotta Army. That specific site remains largely unexcavated, partly out of cultural reverence and partly due to concerns about potential damage or discoveries that might arise from disturbance. Therefore, what can be said about the White Pyramid? Some researchers propose that it is simply one of these imperial burial mounds, its sharp contours having been softened by centuries of erosion into more natural slopes, now forested and largely obscured. Others believe that the photographs captured in the mid-20th century suggest something distinct, a monument that is not only tall, but also geometrically perfect, constructed with mathematical exactitude and unlike any other known Chinese tomb. If this is indeed the case, it would constitute an anomaly, a singular pyramid rising amidst a landscape characterized by rounded hills. Why then is access to it so restricted? Satellite imagery of the area reveals symmetrical structures dispersed across the countryside, many of which are unmarked. Some are acknowledged as ancient mausoleums, while others are labeled as agricultural land despite their unmistakable form. Official sources maintain silence on the matter. Certain areas are designated as restricted, roads are unmarked. Archaeological investigations are limited, if permitted at all. Is this situation solely a matter of preservation, or is something else being protected? Mainstream historians offer a plausible explanation. The Chinese pyramids, if they can be referred to as such, are in fact the burial sites of emperors from the Han, Tang, and earlier dynasties. Covered with earth and overgrown with trees, they were never intended to resemble the stone pyramids of Egypt or Mesoamerica. Their purpose was symbolic, representing a connection between heaven and earth and providing a celestial resting place for rulers who claim divine authority. And yet, the White Pyramid continues to provoke curiosity. Eyewitness accounts, though rare, are consistent in describing a structure composed of pale stone with smooth sides and a flattened summit. Some accounts mention a height exceeding 300 meters, significantly surpassing even the Great Pyramid, but these claims are difficult to verify. No official survey has confirmed them, and no public excavation has explored them. The pyramid remains as it has always been, unspoken, unseen. Speculative theories are abundant. Some propose that the structure predates the known Chinese dynasties, possibly constructed by a forgotten civilization, or one lost to the passage of time in imperial historical revisions. Others link it to ancient legends concerning sky gods and visitors from celestial realms. Narratives about sons of heaven who descended to earth bringing knowledge and tools. While these ideas extend far beyond accepted archaeological frameworks, they reflect a deeper human desire, the yearning to understand why something of such monumental scale could be constructed and subsequently erased from historical records. Even today, China's pyramids receive limited attention on the global stage. Unlike their Egyptian or Mayan counterparts, they are not promoted for tourism, nor are they widely studied in international academic circles. Most remain unexcavated. Some are simply enclosed by fencing and left to the natural processes of the forest. And the White Pyramid, if it exists as described, is treated more as a spectral presence than a recognized monument. What lies concealed within its depths? What stories are sealed beneath that earth? Could it be a tomb, a temple, or something even older than both? No one knows with certainty, and perhaps that is precisely the point. The White Pyramid of China stands, if it stands at all, as a testament to the aspects of history, power, and the selective nature of human memory that we still fail to comprehend. It serves as a reminder of how civilizations choose what is preserved and what is relegated to obscurity. Perhaps one day the veil of secrecy will be lifted. Perhaps archaeologists will be granted permission to excavate, study, measure, and compare. And perhaps we will discover that it is nothing more than a natural elevation, an illusion shaped by wind, erosion, and the human imagination. But until that time, it persists as an enigma, a monumental form glimpsed from the clouds, a silence etched into the landscape, and a question buried beneath layers of earth, time, and confidentiality. The Eye of the Sahara. As the silent slopes of China's Forbidden Pyramid fade into the mist of conjecture, we now direct our attention toward the scorching expanse of North Africa, to a region where the land stretches so far and so emptily that it feels as though time itself has been swept away by wind and sand. The Sahara. However, beneath its endless dunes and sun-baked plains, the desert may hold more than just desolation. Concealed within the world's largest hot desert lies a secret, one not characterized by towering ruins or ancient bones, but by something more peculiar. Patterns in the land, lines, shapes, and perhaps a map. From an aerial perspective, the Sahara presents a canvas of monotonous golden hues. But satellite imagery has begun to dismantle that illusion. Beneath the undulating dunes and rocky basins, researchers and amateur historians have identified various formations, circular depressions, ancient riverbeds buried underground, and faint angular outlines that appear too deliberate to be naturally formed. What emerges is a subtle but persistent suggestion that the desert was not always barren, that deeply embedded within it is the spectral presence of a lost world, potentially even a forgotten civilization. One of the most compelling sites is located in Mauritania, an immense circular feature known as the Richat structure, or more enigmatically, the Eye of the Sahara. Measuring over 25 miles in diameter, this massive geological formation extends outwards in concentric rings of rock and sediment. At ground level, its scale is difficult to perceive, but from space, it is undeniably apparent. A perfectly circular feature situated in the midst of an otherwise featureless landscape. Geologists attribute the Richat structure to a deeply eroded dome of uplifted rock, formed by natural geological processes, but alternative theories have circulated for a considerable time. Some propose that the Eye of the Sahara exhibits a remarkable alignment with descriptions of Atlantis found in Plato's dialogues, a city characterized by concentric rings of water and land. Could it be that this structure, now arid and devoid of life, was once a coastal center before the Sahara transformed into a desert? This is a tempting idea, but the mystery does not conclude there. In 2015, a group of independent researchers analyzing high-resolution satellite data claimed to have detected linear features, faint yet geometrically regular, beneath certain sections of the Sahara's surface. These were not random cracks or ridges. They appeared organized, resembling foundations, roads, canals, traces of infrastructure situated hundreds of feet beneath the sand. Mainstream scientific consensus has long accepted that the Sahara was once a green landscape, a period known as the Green Sahara or African Humid Period, which lasted between approximately 10,000 and 5,000 BC. During that era, the region sustained lakes, rivers, forests, and even thriving communities of hunter-gatherers. Rock art found in areas like Tassili Najar and Gilf Kabir depicts images of giraffes, elephants, and people engaged in dance near rivers. Entire ancient lake beds remain as evidence of past hydrological systems, now fossilized beneath the sand. But what if there is more to the story? What if the Sahara once contained cities? Conducting archaeological surveys in the desert is challenging. Shifting dunes bury discoveries as quickly as they are exposed. Sandstorms can obliterate years of meticulous excavation within hours. Furthermore, political instability in parts of the region makes research even more difficult. However, scattered findings, megalithic stones, pottery fragments, skeletal remains, suggest that large-scale human habitation did exist in the past, extending far beyond the oases we know today. Then there are the maps. Several ancient cartographic records, including those created by Ptolemy and early Islamic geographers, allude to settlements or river systems in areas that are currently inhospitable. Could these accounts reflect a knowledge of a now-buried landscape? And what about the more speculative concepts? Some believe that beneath the Sahara lies not only evidence of past civilizations, but entire chapters of human history that have never been incorporated into textbooks. Lost knowledge, ruins constructed before the recognized empires of Egypt, Nubia, or Carthage, cultures that emerged, thrived, and subsequently collapsed, entirely consumed by climate change and time. The desert is unforgiving. Sand acts as both a destructive force and a preservative medium. Beneath the surface, organic materials decompose, but stone has the capacity to endure. If extensive networks or cities ever existed here, perhaps their outlines persist, like a memory etched onto the very surface of the earth. Today, advanced radar and ground-penetrating technologies are beginning to reveal what the naked eye cannot perceive. Subsurface imaging has already identified paleochannels, ancient riverbeds that once sustained the land. However, researchers believe that this is merely the beginning. The complete history of the Sahara remains concealed, awaiting the application of patience, precision, and perhaps a fundamental shift in our perception of what is possible. What secrets are hidden beneath these sands? Are we observing natural geological formations interpreted through the lens of human imagination? Or are we catching glimpses of the remnants of a civilization erased by climate, forgotten by time? The map beneath the Sahara may not be drawn with ink. It may be a map composed of ruins, of pathways, of something older than language, older than myth. And like all maps, it beckons us to explore, to contemplate not only what has been lost, but also what might still be rediscovered. Crystal weapons from the bog. From the scorching sands of the Sahara, we journey northward into a land where the earth is damp, cold, and rich with secrets. Here, in the low-lying wetlands of Denmark, the past is not interred beneath dunes or concealed behind stone. Instead, it lingers just below the peat, preserved in the silent stillness of a marsh. Tallinn Marsh, a location characterized by fog and shadow, where the air carries the scent of damp soil and decay. It was here in 1950 that peat cutters uncovered a face, serene, peaceful, so remarkably preserved that they initially believed they had found a recent murder victim. However, it was not a recent death. It was a man from over 2 millennia ago, the Tallinn Man. His discovery astonished the world. His features, his skin, even the stubble on his chin, were all preserved by the unique chemical composition of the bog. But he was not an isolated finding. Over time, dozens of other individuals known as bog bodies have been discovered across northern Europe. Men, women, and children, many bearing signs of ritualistic execution. Their lives ended violently, and their bodies were offered to the earth. Yet among the discoveries at Tallinn and other nearby sites, one category of artifacts stands out as particularly enigmatic. Weapons, but not made of bronze or iron, but of crystal. Arrowheads and blades, delicate yet sharp, meticulously carved not from metal, but from translucent quartz. Tools of warfare ceremony that possess a faint, shimmering luminescence. And this raises a fundamental question. Why would anyone in the Iron Age create weapons from crystal? In practical terms, crystal weapons are fragile. Quartz can fracture upon impact. Shaping, flaking, and polishing it requires immense effort compared to bronze or iron. It is inefficient. And yet they appear not in large quantities but often in burial contexts or as ritual offerings, sometimes intentionally broken, sometimes arranged in specific patterns. Archaeologists suggest that these items likely held significant symbolic importance. In some instances, quartz tools were found alongside cremation remains or placed with the deceased in peat-filled graves. In others, they were deposited at the bottom of bogs, where time forgets, but the earth retains memory. Is it possible that these crystal artifacts were never intended for combat? Quartz has long held significance in human cultures. It refracts light, sparkles under the sun, and is found in sacred contexts worldwide. In ancient times, it was associated with purity, protection, and even communication with the divine. Placing a crystal weapon in a bog may have signified more than a simple offering. It may have been a deliberate message. But what were these people conveying? Some believed that the bogs themselves were considered sacred, representing a threshold between different realms. Offering a blade of crystal could have been a means of connecting with or appeasing the gods. Others suggest that the weapon symbolized a rejection of violence, the intentional destruction of tools of power as part of a ritual, a form of spiritual disarmament. Conversely, it is possible that the crystal blades were never weapons at all. Their form resembles tools of war, but their function may have been ceremonial, part of initiation rites, seasonal rituals, or sacrifices that have been lost to oral tradition. A dagger intended not for killing, but for consecration. An arrow designed not for hunting, but for prayer. And still, the mystery deepens. In certain cases, these crystal artifacts exhibit remarkable craftsmanship. Uniform edges and flawless flaking suggest they were created by masters of a lost art. How were these techniques transmitted? Why select such a challenging medium when more easily worked alternatives were available? And why are some of these items found in close proximity to bodies, particularly those who died under violent, ritualistic circumstances? The Tallinn man himself did not possess any crystal artifacts. However, the cultural context of his era, the early Iron Age of Northern Europe, was one deeply imbued with symbolism, sacrifice, and silence. Our understanding of the spiritual world inhabited by these people is limited. No written texts from that time survive, only tools, bones, and the dark memory of marshland rituals. Some researchers have speculated that the crystal weapons may have conferred a form of status, wielded not by warriors but by spiritual leaders, shamans, seers, individuals who mediated between the human and the divine. If this is true, these artifacts were more than mere weapons. They were instruments of ceremony, of storytelling, of cosmic alignment. And still others have posed the question, could quartz have been believed to possess energy, memory, a connection to something beyond the visible realm? These ideas, although speculative, resonate across time. Throughout the world, various cultures have attributed power to stone. From jade amulets in China to obsidian mirrors in Mesoamerica, from rune stones in Scandinavia to the megaliths of Britain, ancient peoples engage in a dialogue with the land and listen to its responses. In this context, the crystal blades of Tallinn Marsh become more than mere curiosities. They become voices, voices without words, questions without answers. Glimmers of a belief system that we can only partially reconstruct. Why were these weapons fashioned from stone that gleams, not from metal that cuts? Were they tools of peace, of death, of remembrance? Or were they something else entirely, something we have forgotten how to perceive? The waters of the marsh preserve flesh, wood, and bone, but they also preserve mystery, a silence that runs deeper than language. And in that silence, the crystal continues to shimmer, waiting, inviting us to contemplate its original meaning and its potential significance today. The Mercury River of Teotihuacan. From the bog-bound crystal blades of northern Europe, we now venture into the heart of ancient Mesoamerica, where stone pyramids pierce the sky and the echoes of a long-vanished civilization still resonate through the volcanic earth. Teotihuacan. Once one of the largest cities in the ancient world, it flourished in the highlands of central Mexico over 1,500 years ago, predating the rise of the Aztec Empire. Its expansive avenues, monumental pyramids, and multi-story residential structures bear testament to a sophisticated urban society that left behind no written language and no known rulers. What remains is a city constructed with deliberate intent, geometrical precision, and understated magnificence. Among its most imposing structures is the Pyramid of the Feathered Serpent, also known as the Temple of Quetzalcoatl. Flanked by stone fangs and the enigmatic visages of ancient deities, this step pyramid conceals a secret not located above, but far beneath its foundations. In 2003, following heavy rainfall that caused the ground to collapse near the temple's base, archaeologists discovered a hidden tunnel, a passage that had remained undisturbed for nearly 2 millennia. As excavations progressed, it became apparent that this was no ordinary chamber. The tunnel extended over 300 feet beneath the pyramid, meticulously carved into the bedrock and clay. Descending in stages, it opened into chambers lined with carefully arranged stones and sealed walls. The deeper they ventured, the more surreal the space became. The walls of the tunnel shimmered in the torchlight, not with gold, but with something far more intriguing: pyrite, mica, crushed hematite, a celestial dusting of minerals embedded within the very architecture. Why would ancient builders line a dark, sealed tunnel with glittering stones? Why go to such elaborate lengths in a space that was seemingly never intended to be seen again? Some believe it was meant to replicate the night sky. In the flickering light of torches, the pyrite sparkles like stars, casting an eerie, celestial glow across the earthen corridor. It transforms the passage into an immersive experience, a journey not merely underground, but through the cosmos. Was this tunnel a ritualistic path to the underworld? A symbolic descent into the creation mythologies of Teotihuacan? Or did it serve a more specific purpose, accessible only to the elite or the deceased? What makes this discovery even more remarkable is its engineering. The tunnel was not simply excavated, it was meticulously designed. A series of strategically placed chambers interrupt the corridor, each seemingly prepared to hold offerings or facilitate ceremonies. Artifacts discovered inside include intricately crafted figurines, obsidian blades, carved shells, jade beads, and sculptures representing serpents. There were also traces of rubber balls, potentially ritual objects connected to Mesoamerican ceremonial games. In the deepest section of the tunnel, near what some believe to be a simulated cosmic womb, researchers found peculiar spheres, dozens of them, varying in size from a few inches to the dimensions of a grapefruit. They were fashioned from clay, meticulously coated with gold-colored pyrite, perfectly spherical, hollow, and arranged in clusters. No accompanying inscriptions were found. No texts explain their meaning. Their function remains unknown. Were they ritual objects, symbolic offerings, representations of celestial bodies? Theories abound, but none provide a completely satisfactory explanation. Furthermore, there is the matter of the tunnel ceiling. At some point between 150 and 250 AD, the entire passage was deliberately sealed off. The entrance was filled with rubble, and the chambers were sealed. This was not a natural collapse. It was an intentional burial. Someone, perhaps an entire priestly order, decided that the tunnel had fulfilled its purpose. And whatever that purpose was, it had to be concealed from future generations. What kind of ritual concludes with the interment of its temple's most sacred pathway? And what lay beyond the glittering chamber? Deep ground-penetrating scans have indicated the presence of additional voids, possibly more chambers, perhaps even a royal tomb. However, no definitive human remains have been discovered as of yet, and Teotihuacan continues to guard its secrets. The discovery of the glittering tunnel adds a new dimension to our understanding of this ancient city. Teotihuacan was not merely a place of rigid urban planning and colossal pyramids. It was also a site of performance, of illusion, of sensory ritual, a city meticulously designed to reflect both the earthly realm and the celestial sphere. Above ground, the Avenue of the Dead was perfectly aligned with astronomical events. Below ground, this tunnel transformed darkness into light and stone into stars. Some archaeologists propose that the tunnel may have symbolized the mythical origin of the world, a place where creation commenced in darkness deep beneath the earth before ascending toward the sun. The tunnel, in this interpretation, would represent a symbolic birth canal, the chambers, wombs in the shimmering stones. Stars, not in the heavens above, but beneath our very feet. And yet others point towards more enigmatic interpretations. Could the tunnel have served as a site of initiation? A secret passage traversed only by priests or rulers during periods of transformation? Could the objects left behind, the jade, the obsidian, the spheres, be remnants of a ritual that is no longer practiced and no longer remembered? Or was this a message deliberately left in silence? Teotihuacan remains unnamed. We do not know the name by which the people who constructed it referred to themselves. Their language, their history, their leaders, all are lost. And yet they left behind a tunnel beneath a pyramid, meticulously constructed, intentionally filled, and adorned with starlight. And so we ask once more, who carved this luminous corridor beneath the earth? Why was it so carefully concealed? And what, if anything, still lies undiscovered in its final chambers? Perhaps the answer lies not in the artifacts or even the architecture, but in the very silence itself, in what the glittering tunnel does not articulate, in what it chooses to withhold, and in the questions that continue to resonate in the darkness, where light once danced upon stone. The Oracle Room of Halseflieni. As we depart from the resonant echoes of the Hypogeum in Malta, a temple where stone and sound appear to be intricately connected, we now journey to the lush volcanic highlands of West Java, Indonesia. Amidst dense forests and terraced hillsides lies a site that challenges not only our understanding of local history, but potentially the timeline of human civilization itself. Gunung Padang. At first glance, it appears to be a simple hill, its slopes covered in grass and fragmented basalt columns. However, upon closer inspection, patterns begin to emerge. Stones are arranged with an unsettling regularity. Platforms ascend sequentially, leading to a flat summit that was once considered a megalithic site of regional cultural importance. For generations, the Sundanese people regarded it as sacred, a place imbued with spiritual energy and power. However, recent investigations suggest that this hill might not be a natural geological formation after all. According to a growing body of archaeological and geophysical research, Gunung Padang could be a pyramid, not one constructed with precise limestone blocks like those in Egypt, but a massive terrace structure composed of layers of worked stone and subterranean chambers. If these claims are substantiated, it would be the largest and potentially the oldest pyramid ever discovered. Conventional historical accounts have long dated the surface megaliths of the site to around 500 BC. However, over the past decade, new radiocarbon dating of soil and organic material extracted from deeper within the structure has yielded astonishing results. Some findings suggest evidence of human activity dating back as far as 20,000 BC. Even conservative estimates propose the presence of layers from around 7,000 BC. In either case, these dates are significantly earlier than any known monumental architecture on Earth. Could Gunung Padang represent a civilization that has been long forgotten, one capable of complex engineering reaching deep into prehistory? Geophysical scans have revealed what appears to be an internal structure beneath the terraces, including cavities, chambers, walls, and successive layers of stonework extending tens of meters below the surface. Some of these layers are aligned with the cardinal directions. Others exhibit anomalies in magnetic readings, indicating they were not positioned by natural processes. The deeper one examines the site, the more peculiar the signals become. And yet the deeper one delves, both literally and metaphorically, the more contentious the site becomes among experts. Many specialists advocate for caution. They argue that the natural geology of the site, particularly the columnar basalt formations, can be easily mistaken for artificial arrangements, that what appears to be a pyramid might simply be a modified natural hill enhanced with ritual stones by later cultures, and that the dating results may reflect ancient organic intrusion rather than deliberate construction. But others are not so quick to dismiss these findings. Indonesian geologist Dr. Danny Hillman Natawijaja has become one of the site's most prominent proponents, arguing that Gunung Padang is a multi-layered construction project, one that evolved over thousands of years, potentially built by a culture that has been lost to the sea or buried by volcanic ash in time. He proposes that it may be the work of survivors from a forgotten era, the memory of which persists only in mythical narratives. Indeed, throughout Southeast Asia, stories are prevalent concerning floods, submerged lands, and ancient kingdoms that were swallowed by the ocean. Could Gunung Padang be a surviving remnant of one of these? And if so, what are the implications for the timeline of human civilization? If proven, it would demonstrate that organized societies capable of large-scale construction existed millennia before the emergence of Mesopotamia or the Nile Valley. It would necessitate a revision of the origin story of civilization itself, suggesting not a sudden appearance after the Ice Age, but a legacy inherited from a more ancient, more complex world. The summit of Gunung Padang is divided into several distinct platforms, each featuring stone arrangements, altars, and aligned megaliths. Their positioning suggests an understanding of astronomy, potentially related to tracking solstices or stellar alignments. However, no writing, no tools, and no human remains have been recovered in a definitive context. Only stone, shaped and placed with purpose, echoing a language that we no longer comprehend. Were these the creations of a priesthood, astronomers, or builders who preserved cosmic knowledge in basalt and earth? Or was Gunung Padang a site of continuous renewal, utilized and reutilized by countless cultures across the ages, each adding a layer to the mountain's long history? What lies concealed within the sealed chambers? What secrets might still lie dormant beneath the forest floor? Excavations at the site have faced delays at times due to factors such as funding limitations, environmental concerns, or academic disputes. Some believe that political pressures and established dogma are contributing factors. Others advocate for patience and rigorous scientific study before attempting to rewrite historical narratives. And perhaps they are correct. But still, the mystery persists. A hill that may be a pyramid, a temple predating known civilizations, a forgotten architectural form whispering through stone. If the deeper layers of Gunung Padang are indeed artificial, they challenge the fundamental framework of archaeology. They compel us to reconsider the capabilities of ancient humans and the timing of their advancements. They prompt us to examine not only the existing evidence, but also what we may have chosen to overlook or forget. Could we have achieved advanced societal development before, constructed complex structures before, and experienced periods of decline before? And if Gunung Padang holds these answers, why does it remain so silent? Why do its stones communicate only through riddles buried beneath the roots of time? Gunung Padang. From the green highlands of Java and the cryptic terraces of Gunung Padang, we descend once more into the desert. Here the landscape transforms, becoming parched, sculpted by wind, and unforgiving. But in the midst of this barren sandstone wilderness lies a city carved not from individual stone blocks, but directly from the living rock itself, Petra. Hidden within the arid mountains of southern Jordan, Petra was once a thriving metropolis of the Nabatean people, traders, engineers, and artisans who flourished more than 2 millennia ago. The city was lost to Western awareness for centuries, gradually obscured by shifting sands and the passage of time, until its rediscovery in the early 19th century. Today it stands as one of the most iconic archaeological sites globally. Its rose-red facades are indelibly imprinted in the minds of travelers, explorers, and those familiar with its mythology. And among these, none is more renowned, more haunting, than the structure known as Al-Khazne, or the Treasury. It emerges abruptly at the conclusion of a narrow gorge, the Syke, a canyon that winds through towering sandstone cliffs, enveloping visitors in shadow until, just beyond the final turn, it is revealed. A monumental facade exceeding 130 feet in height, meticulously carved with precision and elegance into the sheer rock face. Corinthian columns ascend toward the sky. Intricate friezes adorn its surface. At its center, a massive urn rests high above, as if safeguarding a secret lost to the centuries. But what was the treasury's actual purpose? And why does it appear so incongruous, resembling Greek or Roman architecture more than traditional Arabian design, and suggesting a temple rather than a tomb? Traditionally, archaeologists classify it as a royal mausoleum, likely constructed in the 1st century BC. Its architectural style incorporates Hellenistic influences, a testament to Petra's role as a cultural crossroads where the East and West, the desert and the empire, intersected through commerce and cultural exchange. However, the interior of the structure remains remarkably devoid. Its inner chamber is small and unadorned, with plain walls. No inscriptions indicate its function. No sarcophagus has ever been found within its confines, nor has any treasure been discovered, despite centuries of speculation. And therein lies the enigma. The name treasury originates not from any confirmed function, but from legend. Local Bedouin people once believed that the urn situated at the summit contained gold, possibly hidden there by bandits or even by pharaohs fleeing Moses across the desert. Bullet holes still mark the urn to this day, inflicted by treasure hunters who fired upon it in the hope of breaking it open and revealing its secrets, but no treasure was found, and the urn remains sealed. So, what was the true purpose of this structure? Some researchers suggest it may have served as a ceremonial site rather than a burial place. Perhaps it was a temple dedicated to now-forgotten deities, or a political venue where rulers performed sacred rituals. Others have noted that the treasury aligns with celestial patterns. On the solstice, sunlight streams into the canyon and illuminates the facade in a precise manner, as if marking a moment of spiritual or calendrical significance. Was the building specifically designed to capture light within a ritualistic context? Was it an integral part of a larger, unseen network of sacred geometry embedded within Petra's overall design? Or is there an even more profound mystery at play? Behind the treasury, there lies a series of tunnels and underground chambers, many of which remain unexplored. A ground-penetrating radar has detected voids beneath the facade, prompting renewed speculation. Are there concealed rooms located beneath the monument? Could the genuine treasure of Al-Khaznia be situated below, within a lower chamber that has yet to be excavated? And what motivated the Nabateans to undertake such extraordinary efforts to carve this facade? Not to construct it, but to carve it into a location that is so challenging to access, concealed behind a narrow passage that offers no strategic advantage. The Nabateans were exceptional hydraulic engineers, capable of channeling water across vast distances through carved channels and ceramic pipes. They managed one of the most challenging environments on Earth with remarkable ingenuity and foresight. However, their written records are sparse. Much of our knowledge about them is derived from the stones themselves. Ornate, enigmatic, silent. Some fringe theories have taken the mystery further, proposing that Petra and the treasury are significantly older than the officially recognized dates, possibly repurposed by the Nabateans rather than constructed by them. Proponents point to the unusual weathering patterns observed on the sandstone and the absence of inscriptions directly linking the treasury to any known Nabatean king. While mainstream archaeologists maintain a cautious approach, the notion persists that Al-Khazne may be a relic from a much earlier era, a structure so sacred, so charged with significance, that later civilizations chose to preserve it rather than claim it as their own. And perhaps that constitutes a part of its power, because Al-Khazne feels less like a tomb and more like a message, a declaration inscribed in stone, intended not merely to be seen, but to be remembered. Even today, its silent columns stand impervious to the passage of time. Its secrets remain locked within the sandstone. Visitors gaze upwards in awe, stepping into a canyon of shadows and light. Where history does not simply unfold, it reveals itself, one curve, one column, one unanswered question at a time. Who were the builders of the treasury? Why was it so meticulously concealed? And what might still lie beneath, awaiting discovery by someone willing to look beyond the surface? In the stillness of Petra, where the wind whispers through the rock and silence lingers in the stone, The answers remain just beyond reach. But the mystery endures. The rediscovered Maya world. As we leave behind the carved grandeur of Petra's treasury, its silent magnificence still etched into the sandstone, we journey now into the verdant chaos of the jungle, a place where time is measured not in centuries, but in roots and rainfall, where entire cities have lain dormant beneath a dense canopy, untouched, unnoticed, and gradually reabsorbed by the earth. This is the realm of the ancient Maya, and only recently have we begun to perceive it with clarity. For decades, archaeologists traversed the dense jungles of Guatemala, Mexico, and Belize, uncovering stone pyramids, ceremonial ball courts, and intricate urban layouts, evidence of a once great civilization that flourished across Mesoamerica for nearly 3 millennia. The Maya, renowned for their sophisticated calendars, hieroglyphic writing system, and celestial calculations, constructed cities such as Tikal, Calakmul, and Palenque, centers of trade, warfare, and religious practices. However, for every city that was mapped, many more were believed to lie hidden beneath a thick, impenetrable jungle. And the question lingered, how truly extensive was the Maya world? In 2018, that question was partially addressed by a beam of light. LiDAR, an acronym for light detection and ranging, is a remote sensing technology that employs lasers to scan the Earth's surface from aircraft. By digitally removing the forest canopy, LiDAR reveals the contours of the ground below with remarkable precision: hills, rivers, terraced landscapes, and most importantly, structures. Artificial geometric patterns appear where the naked eye perceives only trees. When researchers utilized LiDAR over the northern Petén region of Guatemala, the results astounded even the most experienced archaeologists. Overnight, the known scale of the Maya civilization expanded exponentially. What was revealed was not merely a few new structures, but an entire interconnected network of cities, roadways, fortifications, and agricultural fields. More than 60,000 previously undiscovered structures, homes, palaces, canals, irrigation systems, emerged from the virtual landscape. Some of these complexes exhibited dense urban planning, suggesting populations numbering in the millions, far exceeding previous estimates. Massive causeways connected cities to one another, extending in remarkably straight lines, traversing challenging terrain that had once seemed impassable. Defensive walls encircled certain areas, indicating periods of conflict. Sophisticated water management systems, reservoirs, dams, and drainage channels, demonstrated an understanding of ecology and sustainability that had been lost to time. And yet all of this had remained hidden, not through intentional concealment, but by the natural processes of the environment. How could a civilization of such scale and complexity vanish so completely from view? A partial answer lies in the building materials employed. The Maya constructed with limestone, which is susceptible to weathering in tropical environments. Compared to other ancient cultures, they left relatively few large-scale stone inscriptions. Their cities did not collapse solely due to fire or conquest, but also gradually declined in silence, abandoned to the encroaching forest over centuries. However, LiDAR effectively peeled back the green veil. It demonstrated that what were previously considered isolated ceremonial centers were, in fact, integral parts of a vast, interconnected civilization. The Maya lands, once thought to be sparsely populated, may have supported a sprawling urban society, significantly more advanced in both scale and infrastructure than had been previously believed. And this raises unsettling questions. What caused a civilization of this magnitude to decline? Was it environmental collapse, prolonged drought, internal conflicts, foreign invasion? Or was it something more complex, a convergence of systemic failures in a society stretched beyond its capacity? The LiDAR data hints at both grandeur and vulnerability. Magnificent plazas and sacred pyramids exist alongside evidence of deforestation and the overuse of agricultural land. Roads extend like veins through regions that are now uninhabited. Entire districts that once teemed with life are now merely spectral imprints on the forest floor. And yet many of these sites remain unexcavated. Some are exceedingly difficult to access. Others are protected by nature herself, buried beneath roots thicker than a person's arm, guarded by jaguars, high humidity, and the passage of time. What lies concealed beneath those stones? What texts? What artifacts? What voices from the past are still hidden beneath the breath of the jungle? Some researchers have speculated that the Maya may have attained a level of societal complexity comparable to that of ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, yet without the same emphasis on architectural permanence. Others perceive evidence of societal experimentation, cities designed with radial symmetry, ceremonial centers that emphasize the interplay of sound and sightlines, and astronomical knowledge integrated into their architecture. Is it possible that the Maya possessed knowledge or cultural structures that we have only just begun to comprehend? Even the rediscovered causeways, known as Sac Bay or White Roads, glow under LiDAR. They extend for miles through dense jungle, some elevated above the ground, others sunken and bordered by stone. Were they purely functional, or did they also hold symbolic meaning? Were they processional routes for rulers or pathways for the deceased? And how many more remain concealed beneath forests that have not yet been scanned? Only a fraction of the Maya world has been surveyed using LiDAR. The technology is costly and the jungle is vast. However, what has already been revealed fundamentally alters our understanding. The Maya were not a collection of isolated city-states. They constituted a network, a civilization of remarkable complexity, agriculturally innovative, politically intricate, and spiritually profound. And yet they vanished. Their cities were engulfed by the jungle, their stories fragmented, their people absorbed into the broader sweep of history. But now gradually, beam by beam, the earth is returning them to us. And as we stand at the edge of what has been discovered and what may yet be found, we are compelled to ask, what else is hidden beneath the canopy? What truths await discovery in the silence of the forest floor? And how many other civilizations like the Maya have disappeared from view? Not because they failed to leave a lasting mark, but because we have not yet acquired the means to perceive it. With each scan, each pixel, each faint trace of stone revealed beneath green shadow, the past expands and the mystery deepens. The enigmatic bog bodies. As we depart from the overgrown ruins of Maya cities, newly revealed by beams of light from the sky, we now enter a significantly darker landscape, one that is not illuminated by technology, but by the hushed exhalation of the earth itself. A place not constructed from stone, but shaped by water, peat, and time. The bogs of northern Europe. Here in this environment that is neither entirely solid nor liquid, where mist hangs low over the reeds, and the air is heavy with the scent of decay, something ancient persists. Not ruins, not monuments, but bodies, remarkably preserved within the cold, acidic embrace of the peat. They are known simply as bog bodies, discovered scattered across the wetlands of Denmark, Ireland, Germany, the Netherlands, and the British Isles. These human remains are astonishingly detailed. The skin remains intact, hair adheres to the scalp, fingernails and eyelashes are still present. Even the expressions on their faces appear frozen in a final moment that transcends time. Some appear tranquil, others do not. The most renowned among them, Tollin Man, Graubala Man, Lindo Man, seem not merely preserved, but suspended between different realms. Their skin has darkened to a leather-like texture. Their features are delicate, haunting, and undeniably human. Yet their deaths were not natural. Many exhibit signs of violent ends: strangulation, blunt force trauma, slit throats, bound limbs. They were not simply interred in the bogs. They were deliberately placed there with a specific intention. But what was that intention? The prevailing theory among archaeologists is that these were ritual sacrifices, perhaps offerings made to the gods or to the land itself. The bogs were regarded as liminal spaces, representing thresholds between the realm of the living and the dead, between the human and the divine. In many ancient cultures, wetlands were simultaneously revered and feared, perceived as sites of transition and transformation. Offering a life to the bog may have been a means of restoring equilibrium, appeasing nature, or ensuring a bountiful harvest. Alternatively, it could have been a form of punishment, a way to erase an individual not only from life, but also from collective memory. However, the precise truth remains unknown. Each body tells a distinct story. Tolland Man, discovered in Denmark in 1950, was so exceptionally preserved that his discoverers initially mistook him for a recent murder victim. He wore a pointed cap, and a noose was still present around his neck. No other injuries were found, and no grave goods accompanied him. It was simply his body, gently curled in a fetal position, as if asleep. He has been dated to around 400 BC. Grauballet Man, found in the vicinity, had his throat slit from ear to ear. His skin still exhibits a vibrant color under museum lighting. He died around the same time. His hands showed no signs of manual labor, and his stomach was empty. His death, like so many others, was silent, stark, and definitive. Why were these specific individuals chosen? Were they volunteers, outcasts, or perhaps priests? Were they rulers being returned to the earth, or criminals being expunged from society? Some scholars reference early Iron Age texts and Roman accounts describing barbarian rituals, referring to druids and blood rites, sacred groves, and human sacrifice. However, these writings were filtered through the perspective of conquest, influenced by fear and misunderstanding. The people who placed these bodies in the bogs left no written records detailing their intentions. Only the bodies remain, and the bogs communicate in their own subtle language. The conditions that facilitated the preservation of these remains, anaerobic, acidic, cold, also caused the deterioration of much of the surrounding context. No bones have survived. The peat dissolves hard tissue, leaving behind only soft flesh and organic traces. We gain a glimpse of the individual, but rarely the complete picture of their world. Their world is gone, their final moment preserved. Some bodies were carefully positioned within the peat, arranged with reverence. Others were seemingly tossed or pinned down, suggesting a more violent end. Some were unclothed, while others were dressed in finely woven garments. Occasionally, the contents of their final meal are still present in their stomachs. Grains, porridge, seeds, suggesting either ritual feasting or symbolic fasting. Were these bodies part of larger ceremonies, public acts witnessed by the community, or were they secret sacrifices performed under the cover of moonlight and concealed from collective memory? The mystery deepens when we consider their geographical distribution. Bog bodies have been found across numerous regions, separated by both time and language, yet united by a common practice. Always the bog, always the same indicators: rope, blade, bruising, interment. Was this a shared belief system across different cultures? Or were these isolated practices shaped by similar environmental conditions? And what led to the cessation of these rituals? By the late Iron Age, the tradition appears to decline. Burial customs undergo changes. The bogs return to silence. Was this shift a result of evolving religious beliefs, the rise of new political structures? Or did the people simply forget the profound significance that the bog once held? Today, the bog bodies are displayed in museums, resting beneath glass in subdued lighting. Their skin remains soft from the preserved moisture, and their presence is impossible to overlook. They are not merely skeletal remains. They are not abstract representations. They are people. People who once breathed, walked, wept, and sang. People who were taken gently, violently, reverently into the earth and left there to be discovered. But by whom were they found? And for what purpose? Perhaps that is the ultimate question. These bodies were preserved by nature, but unearthed by human hands, retrieved from the mud either by chance or by curiosity. And now we must confront the question: what are we truly seeing when we gaze into their faces? A sacrifice, a punishment, a ritual that has been forgotten, or simply a life prematurely ended, yet somehow rendered eternal? The bogs do not provide answers. They do not offer explanations. They whisper, and in that whisper, a question lingers, soft and cold. What else lies waiting just beneath the surface? The Sumerian king list. As we carefully step away from the silent peatlands of northern Europe, where the bog bodies lie in their perpetual slumber, we journey southeast to the sun-drenched plains of Mesopotamia, a land shaped by rivers and reeds, by clay tablets and ziggurats, a land that many consider the cradle of civilization. Here, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers once nurtured great cities, The ancient Sumerians meticulously recorded their history, not through oral traditions or fragile parchment, but in cuneiform script impressed into wet clay and subsequently hardened by time. And among the thousands of these tablets, buried and forgotten for millennia, one document stands out, not only for its content but also for the extraordinary questions it provokes. This is the Sumerian king list. On the surface, it appears to be a straightforward historical record, an administrative chronicle of rulers, their associated cities, and the duration of their reigns. However, upon deeper examination, the peculiar nature of the list becomes apparent. The list commences not with ordinary monarchs, but with mythical figures, individuals said to have reigned for impossibly long periods, spanning thousands of years. One king is recorded as having reigned for 28,800 years, another for 36,000. In total, prior to a great flood that engulfed the land, 8 kings are listed as having ruled for a cumulative period of 200 years. And then, the flood occurred. Following this cataclysmic event, the tone of the list undergoes a transformation. The lengths of reigns become more conventional, measured in decades or centuries. Cities rise and fall, wars commence, dynasties are established. The mythological elements gradually transition into a more recognizable historical narrative. However, that initial section, detailing extraordinarily long reigns, persists as an enigma. Why did the Sumerians document reigns lasting tens of thousands of years? Were these numbers symbolic? Were these figures regarded as deities? Or is the list preserving a memory of something far more ancient, something that we have forgotten how to interpret? Mainstream scholarly interpretations tend to view these early entries as mythical reflections of divine kingship or symbolic numerology. Some propose that the numbers may represent lunar months rather than solar years, which would significantly reduce the duration of the reigns. Others suggest they were simply poetic exaggerations intended to forge a connection between the rulers and the divine realm. And yet the structure of the king list does not resemble a myth. It is presented with bureaucratic precision, organized, consistent, and factual in tone. It names actual cities, Eridu, Larsa, Uruk, cities whose existence has been confirmed through archaeological evidence. It seamlessly transitions from the realm of the gods to the realm of human kings, without a clear demarcation. Therefore, who were these early rulers? Some researchers have drawn parallels with other ancient texts. The Bible, for instance, describes antediluvian patriarchs, such as Methuselah, living for hundreds of years. In Indian traditions, yugas encompass periods spanning tens of thousands of years. In Egypt, the Turin king list includes divine and semi-divine dynasties that are said to have ruled for millennia before the historical pharaohs. Is it merely a coincidence that so many ancient cultures recount an era when rulers lived for significantly longer periods and civilizations endured for eons? Or is there a discernible pattern? Fringe theorists have proposed that the earliest Sumerian kings may not have been human at all, but rather beings from a preceding epoch, perhaps of a different nature or origin. Narratives concerning the Anunnaki, divine beings who are said to have descended from the heavens and shaped humanity, have fueled countless alternative theories. However, concrete evidence to support these claims remains elusive, consisting more of suggestion than verifiable proof. Nevertheless, the question persists: why did the Sumerians compile this list in the manner that they did? If its purpose was purely symbolic, why the inclusion of exact numerical values? Why the precise sequence of cities? Why anchor it with a global event, the flood, which appears in narratives across diverse cultures? The flood itself, as referenced in the king list, marks a pivotal turning point. The flood swept over the earth, it states simply, without elaboration, without mythological detail, just a single line. And yet, throughout the ancient world, from Mesopotamia to India, from Greece to the Americas, there are echoes of the same event: a great deluge, a reset, a world purified by water. Did the Sumerians preserve a memory here? Not merely of kings and cities, but of the cyclical nature of time, of ages lost beneath water and sand. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of severe flooding in the Mesopotamian basin, dating to approximately 2900 BC. While this event may not have been global in scope, it was catastrophic on a local level. Entire cities were affected. Is it possible that the king list is encoding historical information? Not in the way we define history, but in the way ancient peoples remembered it. Memory, after all, is not always linear. It is layered, compressed, and transformed. Perhaps the reigns of 30,000 years were not intended to be numerically precise, but to evoke a sense of vast time, to signify an era when the world was different, when gods interacted with humans, when time was measured not by clocks or calendars, but by cycles, celestial movements, and narratives. And yet one detail remains difficult to reconcile. Why initiate a formal administrative record with such improbable claims, only to transition into listing known and verifiable rulers? Why not separate myth from history? Why merge the two within a single document that was repeatedly copied and reinterpreted over centuries? Unless the Sumerians did not perceive them as distinct categories at all. To them, the divine past was an integral part of the historical present. The realms of gods and kings overlapped, merged, and echoed one another. And perhaps from that perspective, the notion of a 36,000-year reign was not considered absurd. It was a truth of a different kind. So, we are left with an enigma, one etched in clay, still legible after 5,000 years. A list that begins not with a question, but with a declaration. After kingship had descended from heaven, what existed before history as we understand it? Who ruled in the time before time? And how many truths concealed within myth and represented by numbers have we yet to decipher? The tablets are silent now, but their communication is not concluded. The painted skull of Jericho. From the ancient memories inscribed in clay, chronicling Sumerian kings whose reigns extended impossibly into the distant past, we now shift our attention to something far more intimate, yet equally enigmatic. A human face, painted, preserved, and carefully positioned, not beneath stone or within a burial chamber, but delicately balanced on the back of a turtle shell. This artifact does not announce itself with grandeur. It was discovered quietly within a remote burial site on the island of Jericho, located in the West Bank. Here, layers of soil concealed one of the most perplexing findings from the Neolithic era. Among the remnants of an early settlement, archaeologists unearthed a human skull. However, what made it remarkable was the treatment it had received. The skull had not simply been buried, it had been altered. Its facial features were painted with red ochre, a mineral pigment long associated with ritualistic practices and burial rites. The paint meticulously outlined the eyes, nose, and lips, presenting a face that had been recreated after death. And beneath it, supporting the skull like a base, was the curved shell of a turtle. This unusual combination of bone and shell, pigment and earth, was not an isolated occurrence. At various sites throughout the Levant, dating back as far as 8000 BC, archaeologists have discovered plastered and painted skulls, often detached from their original bodies. Some were interred beneath the floors of residential structures, suggesting they may have served as ancestral relics, symbols of remembrance, protection, or veneration. However, the presence of the turtle shell introduces a deeper layer of symbolism, one that scholars still struggle to interpret. Why place a human skull atop a turtle shell? Was it intended to serve as an altar, a throne, or perhaps a cradle for the spirit? The turtle is a potent symbol across numerous cultures. In some traditions, it represents the cosmos itself, its shell supporting the land and sky. In others, it symbolizes longevity, wisdom, and the boundary between the terrestrial and aquatic realms, between life and death. But within the specific context of Neolithic Jericho, we can only speculate on its significance to the people who so deliberately placed it beneath the soil. Perhaps the combination of skull and shell signified rebirth, with the hard enclosing shell symbolizing protection, incubation, or the transformation of the soul. Or perhaps the turtle, a creature known for its ability to withdraw into its shell and re-emerge, was viewed as a metaphor for the deceased, returning in some unseen form. The paint adds another dimension to this mystery. Red ochre has been employed in burial practices worldwide for tens of thousands of years across Africa, Europe, and Asia. Its color resembles blood, symbolizing life and flesh. To paint the face of the deceased was an act intended to restore them to life, or at least to remember them as they were in life. But was this an expression of grief, a ritual of power, or something more personal, an attempt to preserve identity beyond the decay of the body? We do not know the identity of this individual. No name accompanies the skull, no text provides context, and no grave goods other than the shell were found. We do not know if they were a leader, a shaman, or simply a beloved member of the community. However, the meticulous care taken in the preparation and placement suggests reverence and intentionality. Other skulls from the same era have been discovered with eyes recreated, using shells or features sculpted from plaster. Some show signs of having been displayed, perhaps mounted in shrines or passed down through generations, suggesting a form of ancestor worship, a communion with the deceased, who were kept close to the living, rather than interred in distant tombs. What kind of relationship did these ancient people have with death? Was the skull perceived as a vessel of memory, wisdom, or protection? Or was it something more mystical, a medium through which the dead could still communicate? The presence of the turtle shell complicates any singular interpretation. It is both a natural object and a symbolic representation, serving both a functional and spiritual purpose. Was the shell used to transport the skull in processions? Did it rest in a sacred location, a point of connection between different realms? Or was it simply a reflection of a narrative that we no longer remember? And what could the pairing of a human and a turtle have meant in a world without written language? Here we are left with symbols of bone, pigment, and shell, a face reimagined after death, a skull positioned not in the ground, but upon the shell of another creature, a ritual act or a deliberate message. Modern archaeologists have only just begun to identify the patterns. And while some propose that such practices were part of a broader Neolithic tradition of venerating ancestors, others remain cautious. The meanings may be multifaceted, context-dependent, and ultimately lost in the silence of the past. Today, the painted skull resting on a turtle shell is housed in a museum, protected, studied, and removed from the earth that once concealed it. But its mystery remains intact. Why was it painted? Why was it separated from its body? Why, of all things, was it placed on a turtle? Perhaps it was an offering to the gods. Perhaps it was the embodiment of a myth. Or perhaps it was something simpler, more profoundly human, a final act of love, of remembrance, of awe. In the end, the face gazes back at us, not with fear or pain, but with a tranquility that transcends time. A face reborn, balanced on a shell, whispering something that we still cannot quite comprehend. The stone circles of the Sahara, from the painted skull and its silent resting place atop a turtle shell, we now lift our gaze to the horizon. Across the vast emptiness of the Sahara, a landscape where wind sculpts sand into undulating formations, and the sun scorches the stone during the day and chills the earth at night. But within this desolate expanse, where life seems impossible and silence reigns supreme, stand patterns that speak of something ancient, something deliberately constructed. Stone circles are scattered across the western and central Sahara, from the deserts of Mauritania to the far reaches of Niger and Algeria. There are hundreds, possibly thousands of these stone formations. Some are simple rings composed of rough blocks, barely visible above the sand. Others are more elaborate, standing stones aligned with the cardinal points, slabs balanced with unsettling precision, and spiral-like formations whose meaning remains obscured by the passage of time. Among the most enigmatic of these sites is Tikrit in southeastern Mauritania. Here on the edge of an arid plateau lie the remnants of one of the oldest known settlements in West Africa. Thousands of years ago, this region was not a desert, it was a savanna, green, fertile, inhabited by early herders and farmers who constructed stone compounds and left behind walls that still cling to the rocks today. And at its center, stone circles. Conventional archaeology dates some of these structures to as early as 2000 BC, although some may be even older. They were likely built by the ancestors of the Soninka people, who were precursors to the later Ghana Empire. However, even this explanation leaves many questions unanswered. Why these circles? Why this specific shape? Were they dwellings, ceremonial enclosures, or something more symbolic? Some circles are surrounded by burial mounds. Others are found in clusters, connected by low stone walls suggesting communal activity, yet they appear to lack the tools and debris of daily life. There are no extensive middens, no hearths. In certain cases, the stones are too large and too meticulously arranged for simple domestic use. Researchers have proposed that they could have served as markers, calendrical tools for tracking the solstices or equinoxes, much like Stonehenge or Nabta Playa in southern Egypt. Others suggest they functioned as sacred spaces, shrines dedicated to forgotten deities, or places where the realms of the dead and the living intersected. But if this is the case, what rituals were performed here? And why are there so many circles scattered across such an inhospitable landscape? One of the most striking characteristics of these stone structures is their isolation. Many are located far from modern settlements, on elevated ground, or in areas with no apparent water source. Some are only accessible after days of travel across the dunes. And yet the stones remain undisturbed, unmoved, still standing as they have for millennia. Who transported these stones? Who selected these specific locations? And what knowledge guided their precise placement? In some instances, the stones appear to be magnetically aligned. In others, they seem to echo the constellations above, mirroring the stars as if mapping the celestial realm onto the terrestrial. Whether by design or coincidence, these patterns invite speculation. Did these ancient builders possess a form of astronomy encoded in stone? Were these monuments part of a larger spiritual worldview that has now been erased by the desert and the passage of time? The Sahara has not always been a barren wasteland. During the African humid period, this region was lush and green, dotted with lakes, rivers, and herds of game. It supported thriving communities, many of which vanished as the rainfall diminished and the sands advanced. Some may have migrated while others may have adapted, but the circles remained, rising like punctuation marks in a forgotten narrative. Their function, their creators, their timeline, all remain elusive. Few have been systematically excavated. Even fewer have been studied using modern techniques like LiDAR or deep ground scanning, and perhaps that is part of their mystique. Unlike the grand monuments of Egypt or Mesopotamia, the stone circles of the Sahara whisper rather than declare their presence. They do not dominate the landscape. They blend into it, becoming almost invisible within it. They were not constructed to impress, but perhaps to endure. They hint at a civilization that organized itself not through monumental displays of ego, but through rhythm, alignment, and quiet reverence. A people who recognize significance in repetition, in form, and in the language of the land. And yet, as the centuries passed, the climate changed. The green vegetation gave way to golden sand. The lakes dried up. The wind became more intense. And whatever stories the stones once conveyed were buried. Today they wait, silent, weathered, partially obscured by sand. What was the meaning of these circles? Were they homes for the living or thresholds for the dead? Did they mark the stars, the seasons, or something even more profound? A worldview, an unseen map, a memory. We may never fully know. But in a landscape stripped bare of noise, movement, and distraction, the stones continue to speak. Not in words, but through their presence, their placement, and their mystery. And as we gaze across the endless horizon of the Sahara, we are left with a single, quiet question. What ancient hands laid these stones? And what truth were they attempting to leave behind? The Roman dodecahedrons. From the silent circles scattered across the Sahara, ancient stones aligned with the sky and earth. We now shift our attention to something smaller, stranger. Not found in deserts or beneath dense jungle canopies, but unearthed in quiet fields and forgotten Roman outposts. Objects that resist categorization, that seem simultaneously practical and ceremonial, ordinary and otherworldly. The Roman dodecahedrons, small, hollow objects crafted from bronze, featuring 12 pentagonal faces, each pierced by a circular hole, and knobs at each corner. No two are exactly alike. Some are simple in design, while others are intricately crafted, ranging in size from that of a golf ball to a grapefruit. Their symmetry is unmistakable, yet their purpose remains unknown. Over 100 of these dodecahedrons have been discovered across northern and western Europe, in regions that were once under Roman control: Britain, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Hungary. And they consistently appear in the same peculiar pattern. They are found far from the political center of the empire, not in Rome, Athens, or Alexandria, but on the frontier. But what was their intended use? No ancient Roman text mentions them. No inscription provides an explanation. They are never found with accompanying documentation or diagrams, and yet they continue to surface within layers dating to the Roman era, often alongside coins, pottery, and tools. Everyday objects of known function are found next to something inexplicable. Some have been discovered within military camps, others near temples, and a few even in burial contexts. And while we know they were produced during the Roman period, between the 2nd and 4th centuries AD, their purpose remains a mystery. Over the years, countless theories have been proposed. Some suggest that the dodecahedrons were measuring devices, used to calculate distances or sizes based on the varying diameters of the holes. Others hypothesize that they were surveying tools, assisting Roman engineers in the construction of roads or aqueducts. However, the absence of wear, the irregularity of the hole sizes, and the lack of standardization diminish the credibility of these ideas. Could they have been astronomical instruments used to track celestial events or alignments? The pentagonal geometry and hollow structure have led some to speculate about their role in marking the equinoxes, solstices, or phases of the moon. But again, there is no concrete evidence to support this. More speculative suggestions are abundant. They have been proposed as candle holders, spools for knitting gloves, gaming dice, religious artifacts, or status symbols. Some even believe they were tools used in divination rituals, practices that we can no longer reconstruct. Objects passed between priests and individuals seeking guidance, with the holes symbolizing gateways to unseen realms. A theory that is gaining traction posits that the dodecahedrons may have been part of a localized religious practice, a cult that is unknown to us, possibly confined to the northern provinces of the Roman Empire. Their discovery in temples and graves suggests a symbolic use. The knobbed corners, perhaps, were not merely decorative, but held significance, serving as points of contact for fingers or markers for orientation. Their emptiness may have been intentional, a form designed to suggest the absence of form. And then there is the question of their disappearance. After the 4th century, no new dodecahedrons are found. The practice or the knowledge vanishes, as if a ritual was abandoned, a craft forgotten, a need that no longer existed. Why did this occur? Was it the spread of Christianity, replacing older traditions with new doctrines, a broader cultural shift, or something more subtle, a loss of local identity in the face of imperial change? In many ways, the dodecahedrons serve as a reminder of the fragility of knowledge. They illustrate how easily, even within a literate and extensive empire like Rome, a single artifact can defy explanation, survive the decline of empires, but lose the memory of its meaning. Modern reproductions have attempted to understand their function. Some enthusiasts have used replicas to project light through the holes, suggesting a potential role as optical devices. Others have used 3D printing to create models, threading yarn through them or placing candles inside, hoping that their function will become apparent through their form. But the truth remains elusive. We are left with an object that defies classification, too complex to be accidental, too consistent to be meaningless, and yet too mysterious to be understood. What kind of culture would craft such precise geometric forms and leave no record of their use? What kind of empire would forget not only how an object worked, but why it was created in the first place? Perhaps the Roman dodecahedron was not designed for a practical function, but for contemplation. Perhaps its mystery is its very purpose, a puzzle offered to time, a question posed across centuries. Because when we hold one in our hands, cold, hollow, and silent, we are reminded of something that ancient cultures understood well, that not all knowledge is conveyed through written text. Some is encoded in shape, in space, in silence. And so we wonder, was the dodecahedron a tool, a symbol, a prayer, or was it something else entirely? something that we have not yet learned to perceive. Its 12 faces reflect not only light, but also the limitations of our current understanding and what still awaits rediscovery in the shadows of the past. The Babylonian Eclipse Tablet. From the hollow geometries of the Roman dodecahedrons, objects that resist revealing their purpose, we now turn to something more familiar in form, yet equally profound in its mystery. A clay tablet, cracked and weathered, inscribed with minuscule wedge-shaped marks. An object of seemingly simple appearance, yet extraordinary in the information it contains. It was unearthed in ancient Mesopotamia, where the grand cities of Babylon once thrived alongside the gently flowing waters of the Euphrates. A land characterized by ziggurats and libraries, by rulers and scribes. A place where the celestial realm was not merely observed, but meticulously measured, mapped, and integrated into the very fabric of daily existence. The Babylonian Eclipse Tablet, catalogued as BM 33066 in the British Museum, represents one of the clearest surviving records documenting how this ancient civilization tracked astronomical events. It contains a list of both solar and lunar eclipses recorded with astonishing accuracy. Each entry not only specifies the date of the event, but also describes its characteristics, direction, and duration. Some tablets even include annotations regarding political consequences or omens associated with the eclipse, reflecting a synthesis of scientific observation and spiritual interpretation that defined Babylonian thought. The most renowned among these is the Saros cycle tablet, which meticulously records a series of 38 lunar eclipses that occurred over a period of 223 lunar months, slightly exceeding 18 years. This cycle is still utilized by contemporary astronomers to predict the recurrence of eclipses. Remarkably, over 2,500 years ago, Babylonian scholars had already identified this pattern without the aid of telescopes, computers, or satellites. How did they achieve this? This question continues to perplex historians of science. The Babylonians were diligent observers. They maintained records of celestial events spanning generations, each entry meticulously inscribed in cuneiform, often by temple scribes who were trained in both astrology and mathematics. Nevertheless, the level of sophistication required to identify and track the Saros cycle is truly extraordinary. Was it purely based on empirical observation, refined through centuries of dedicated skywatching? Or did they possess a conceptual model of the cosmos that was more advanced than we currently acknowledge? Some scholars propose that they employed a form of proto-trigonometry, utilizing geometrical calculations inferred from planetary movements to predict when eclipses would occur. Others suggest that this knowledge may have been inherited from even earlier cultures, subsequently codified and expanded upon in the renowned scribal schools of Babylon. And yet, beyond the technical brilliance, there lies a deeper significance. To the Babylonians, an eclipse was never merely a physical phenomenon. It was regarded as a sign, a message, a warning. Lunar eclipses were often interpreted as omens portending events concerning the ruler. Solar eclipses were viewed as portents of upheaval, disease, or warfare. The sky was not simply a backdrop, it was an active participant in the affairs of humanity. In one tablet, an eclipse is followed by a record of famine. In another, a king dies. While these connections may be coincidental, the belief in their significance was deeply ingrained. The heavens and the earth were believed to move in harmony, and to disregard the signs was to invite disaster. This is where the mystery intensifies. While numerous ancient cultures observed the celestial bodies, the Egyptians with their star clocks, the Mayans with their calendars, it is in Babylon that we observe the first clear synthesis of astronomy and prediction. A form of scientific inquiry not rooted in physical exploration, but in the recognition of patterns and rhythms, in the assignment of meaning. And one cannot help but ponder, was it merely pattern recognition, or was there something more profound at play? Some researchers have noted that Babylonian astronomical texts occasionally describe the behavior of the moon with remarkable abstraction, referring not only to its visible motion, but also to its ideal motion. They envision the moon's trajectory not simply as it appeared, but as it should appear in a perfect theoretical model. This suggests a cognitive leap beyond mere observation, a transition into conceptual, even theoretical thinking. Is it possible that the Babylonians possessed not only knowledge of cycles and charts, but also early algorithms? Was their eclipse science more than just a descriptive record? Was it a form of encoded celestial mathematics? Contemporary studies of tablets like BM 3366 indicate that this is indeed the case. The tablet does not merely list past events, it predicts them. It employs modular arithmetic, positional notation, and sophisticated methods of timekeeping. Some texts even reveal corrections made by later scribes, indicating an ongoing process of refinement in a living body of knowledge. And yet, despite this remarkable intellectual achievement, the full extent of their system remains unclear. Many tablets are fragmented, and others have not yet been translated. Some may still be buried beneath the soil of Iraq, fragments of lost libraries awaiting discovery. Therefore, what other knowledge did they possess? What other cycles, what other patterns might be encoded within the tablets that we have yet to decipher? And is it possible that, even today, modern astronomy owes more to the Babylonians than we currently comprehend? The Babylonian eclipse tablet is more than just an artifact. It is a gateway into a way of thinking that perceived the night sky not as an enigma, but as a comprehensible map. A mind that tracked the movement of shadows across the moon and discerned within them not chaos but rhythm, predictable laws, warnings, and perhaps a deeper understanding. We may never know the names of the scribes who meticulously etched these patterns into clay, but their voices endure, not in sound, but in the orbits of celestial bodies, in the play of shadows, in the rhythmic cycle of the moon's passage across the sun. And within that quiet celestial alignment, we are left to contemplate what else have they bequeathed to us. Encoded within the heavens, awaiting rediscovery. The Library of Ashurbanipal, from the clay tablets of Babylon that foretold eclipses with uncanny accuracy, we now trace a path northward into the heart of ancient Assyria. There, in the city of Nineveh, beneath layers of ash and ruin, archaeologists made a discovery that few had dared to imagine. A lost royal library not consisting of scrolls but of tablets, thousands of them, cracked and charred, yet miraculously preserved. This is the Library of Ashurbanipal, the oldest known library in the world. Hidden beneath what is now northern Iraq, the ruins of Nineveh remain silent for centuries. Buried after the fall of the Assyrian Empire around 612 BC, when the invading Babylonians and Medes ravaged the city, they set fire to the palaces, temples, and archives. Clay tablets, which are typically fragile, were inadvertently hardened by the intense flames. However, in a peculiar twist of fate, the fire that destroyed the city inadvertently preserved its intellectual heritage. When British archaeologist Austen Henry Layard commenced excavations at the site in the mid-19th century, he unearthed an astonishing collection. Over 30,000 cuneiform tablets and fragments, all constituting a royal archive curated under the reign of King Ashurbanipal, the last prominent ruler of Assyria. Ashurbanipal was not an ordinary monarch. He styled himself King of the World and King of the Four Quarters, but he also possessed scholarly interests. He was literate in both Sumerian and Akkadian. He surrounded himself with scribes and scholars, and he decreed that the knowledge from his empire and preceding civilizations be collected and preserved. And what was preserved is truly extraordinary. Among the tablets are records of royal correspondence, astronomical calculations, legal decrees, medical texts, ritual instructions, myths, omens, dictionaries, and even magical spells. And then there is the Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest known work of literature, discovered not in a dusty chamber of scrolls, but buried within the ashes of Nineveh, inscribed on clay. The Library of Ashurbanipal was more than a simple archive. It was a repository of collective memory, a treasury of human thought. However, it was also curated with deliberate intent. Texts were copied from older sources, some of which were already ancient by the time they reached Nineveh. Others were translations compiled from distant regions of the empire. A few were marked with curses, warning any future ruler against tampering with or removing the knowledge contained within. And yet, despite its extensive scope, the library still conceals secrets. Not all of the tablets have been fully deciphered. Many remain fragmented. Some appear to reference other, older collections that have now been lost to time. hinting at the existence of libraries within libraries, networks of knowledge that once extended across Mesopotamia. Why did Ashurbanipal undertake such extensive efforts to preserve these writings? Was it solely for political reasons, an attempt to consolidate power through divine and intellectual authority? Or did he believe, like the Babylonians, that knowledge itself was a powerful force, capable of influencing destiny, healing the body, and protecting the state? Some scholars propose that the library also served a ritualistic function. Omens, incantations, and dream interpretations were housed alongside administrative texts. It was possible to consult the stars and the gods within the same physical space. Did the library function as a spiritual engine for the empire, its vital force hidden behind walls of clay and script? And what about the fire? While the destruction of Nineveh was a brutal event, the burning of the library represents both a tragedy and a paradox. Had it not been for the flames, the tablets might not have survived the passage of time. Their temporary exposure to intense heat rendered them permanently durable. However, the fire also scattered the collection, fragmented the tablets, obliterated contextual information, and consumed the wooden cataloging systems. Today, much of the library exists as a puzzle of fragmented pieces. Can the complete library ever be reconstructed? Ongoing efforts by the British Museum and other institutions have successfully reassembled numerous texts, but thousands remain only partially translated. Some tablets suggest the existence of scientific and philosophical knowledge that has been lost to modern understanding, including texts on metallurgy, alchemy, and cosmology. Were these remnants of earlier, more profound knowledge, or simply the intellectual endeavors of a distant empire distorted by the passage of time? Even more intriguing are the gaps, missing volumes, incomplete records, references to texts that no longer exist. Some believe that entire sections of the library have yet to be discovered, still buried beneath the ruins. Others suggest the possibility that duplicate collections were stored elsewhere, perhaps in Nippur or even Babylon, awaiting future discovery. Could there still be tablets concealed within the earth, untouched since the era of Ashurbanipal? And if so, what revelations might they contain? As we reflect upon this ancient library, we are reminded of the fragility of knowledge, of how easily it can be lost, not only through destructive events like fire or conquest, but also through simple neglect. And yet, something about the library of Ashurbanipal endured through war, ruin, looting, and sandstorms. The tablets survived. They communicate in silence now, from museum shelves and digital scans. Their wedge-shaped marks persist, stubborn, delicate echoes of voices that have long since passed away. But the mystery endures. Was the library merely a record of what was known, or was it a repository for what was feared would be forgotten? What truths were compiled by the literate king, and how many still lie buried beneath dust, beneath stone, awaiting the right hands to lift them back into the light? The masked statues of Ain-Ghazal, from the blackened tablets of Ashurbanipal's library, inscribed with the wisdom of fallen empires, we step even further back in time, beyond the age of writing, beyond the earliest cities, into a world characterized by stone, earth, and ritual. A time when memory was preserved not through written words but through faces. Buried beneath the dry hills just outside the modern city of Amman, Jordan, lies the Neolithic site of Ain-Ghazal, a settlement over 9,000 years old. Long before the construction of the pyramids, long before the emergence of Sumerian civilization, people resided here in homes constructed from mud brick, cultivating crops, raising animals, and intentionally shaping the landscape. However, what they left behind beneath the floors of their dwellings has perplexed and captivated archaeologists since their initial discovery in the 1980s. Dozens of human figures, some depicted standing, others kneeling, were crafted from lime plaster and reeds. Their surfaces are smooth and pale, and their eyes are wide and black, made from bitumen, nearly life-size statues interred in pits, sealed beneath layers of soil. And what is most striking about them are their faces. They wear masks, flat, expressionless, almost alien in their simplicity. The facial features are stylized: thin lips, narrow noses, oversized eyes, and blank stares. Some statues are depicted with two heads, others appear androgynous, and all of them emanate the same serene, inscrutable presence, as if intended to represent not specific individuals, but rather archetypes, ancestors, or something else entirely. Who were these figures? Were they deities, gods sculpted by the hands of early humans out of reverence or fear? Were they representations of the deceased, their likenesses preserved long after their physical bodies had perished? Or were they masks symbolizing not just a physical covering for the face, but also the very essence of identity, barriers between this world and another? Mainstream archaeological interpretations suggest that the statues may have been part of an ancestor cult, created for ritualistic purposes and subsequently deliberately buried after their use. Similar traditions have been observed throughout the ancient Near East, where the skulls of the deceased were sometimes plastered and painted, preserved in shrines or beneath homes. However, the statues found at Ain Ghazal extend far beyond mere decoration. They represent complete bodies, meticulously sculpted with considerable effort, care, and deliberate purpose, and they were evidently not intended to be displayed for extended periods. Each statue was constructed from a fragile material, a mixture of lime plaster applied over a core of bundled reeds. Once completed, they were not exhibited in public spaces. Instead, they were buried, concealed within specially excavated pits, often in groups. Some sets include figures representing children, adults, and ambiguous forms positioned side by side, suggesting a narrative that we no longer comprehend. Why create such lifelike representations only to immediately enter them? Were they integral to a sacred ritual, a cycle of birth, death, and regeneration? Or did they symbolize something even more abstract, spirits, archetypes, or mythical ancestors whose presence was to be invoked and then returned to the earth? No written language from this period has survived to provide interpretative guidance. No myths, no legends, only the statues themselves and the deliberate manner of their burial. Some scholars have noted that the figures lack genitalia, suggesting a blurring of gender and individual identity. Others interpret the dual-headed statues as symbolizing a form of dualism, perhaps representing concepts like life and death, light and dark, or body and spirit. The faces, particularly the masks, remain the most haunting detail. They do not convey happiness or sadness. They do not seem to express emotions in a way that is familiar to us. And yet, they appear watchful, patient. They seem to be waiting. Are these the earliest portraits in human history? Or are they not portraits at all, but rather vessels? Could the masks symbolize a transformation, a transition between the human and the divine, between individual personhood and something beyond? The inhabitants of Ain Ghazal lived during a pivotal period in human development, when nomadic lifestyles were giving way to permanent settlements, when agriculture was reshaping the landscape, and when spiritual beliefs began to manifest in more complex symbolic forms. In such a context, these statues may have represented an early attempt to understand the essence of being human, to embody the intangible, to give form to that which is invisible. However, we can only speculate. The site itself continues to yield new discoveries. Beneath homes and communal areas, more statues and figurines have been found, each intentionally buried. Some suggest that there may have been a designated area for sculpting, a kind of sacred workshop where clay and reeds were imbued with meaning. And yet, like many Neolithic sites, a significant portion of Ain Ghazal has already been lost. Urban expansion has encroached upon large areas of the ancient settlement. What remains is fragile, meticulously preserved in museums and beneath protective excavation shelters. And the deeper meanings behind the statues, the rituals, the narratives, the beliefs, remain elusive. Nevertheless, they communicate not through language, but through form. They invite us to envision a world without writing, where understanding was conveyed through gestures, symbols, and ceremonies. A world where the face was not merely a reflection of the individual self, but a bridge to something greater. Thus, we are left with these questions. Were these masked statues offerings, embodiments of memory or warnings? Were they representations of deities or the very first mirrors of our own being? And why, after shaping them with such care, were they interred as if to remain in perpetual slumber? Perhaps the people of Ain Ghazal believed that certain things should not be left above ground, that there is power in concealment, That memory, like the face hidden behind a mask, sometimes reveals more through silence than through explicit expression. Whatever their original purpose, the statues persist, still watchful, and in their inherent mystery, more alive than ever. The elongated skulls of Peru. From the quiet gazes of the masked statues found at Ain Ghazal, faces frozen in enigmatic expressions and buried beneath the Neolithic soil, we now embark on a journey to the high, arid plateaus of South America. This is a land marked by ancient lines etched into the landscape, steeped in mythology, and home to one of archaeology's most peculiar enigmas, the elongated skulls of Peru. Discovered across burial sites extending from the coastal deserts of Paracas to the highlands of Cusco and the sacred valley beyond, these human skulls are distinctly different from others. They exhibit an unnatural length, a sloping back, and a dramatic elongation backward into conical shapes, sometimes nearly doubling the cranial volume of an average skull. And yet, these are not modern fabrications. They are genuine artifacts. Thousands of them have been unearthed, dating back as far as 2000 BC, preserved by the dry soil and burial chambers of pre-Incan civilizations. Upon initial inspection, the effect is striking, almost appearing alien. Hollow eye sockets lie beneath exaggerated foreheads, and cheekbones are cast in shadow beneath a sloping dome of bone. And while some might initially perceive them as deformities or even products of fantasy, they are indicative of a deeply ingrained tradition, a cultural practice that was passed down through generations. This process is known as cranial modification or intentional cranial deformation. It involves the practice of binding an infant's head with cloth or wooden boards during the earliest months of life, while the bones are still soft and pliable. Over time, the skull reshapes, adopting elongated or flattened forms depending on the desired outcome. This practice was not exclusive to Peru. Variations of cranial modification have been observed across the globe, from ancient Egypt to the Huns of Central Asia, from the Pacific Islands to indigenous tribes in North America. However, in the Andean region, this practice attained an unparalleled degree of consistency and complexity. Why was this done? What did the people of ancient Peru perceive in this elongated shape? Was it a symbol of aesthetic beauty, social status, or divinity? In Paracas, one of the earliest and most renowned sites where elongated skulls have been found, the burials often indicate a high social standing. Elaborate textiles, fine pottery, and well-constructed tombs surround the bodies. This suggests that the practice may have denoted elite status, possibly including roles such as priesthood or royalty. In some cases, entire family lineages appear to have continued this tradition, their children's physical forms shaped not only by genetics but also by deliberate design. Yet the story does not end with cultural custom. Some of the skulls from Paracas exhibit anomalies that have fueled deeper scientific curiosity. Unusually large cranial capacity, the absence of the sagittal suture, a joint that typically separates the two parietal bones of the human skull, and increased bone density, features that some claim cannot be fully explained by binding alone. While the majority of researchers maintain that these differences fall within the range of natural human variation, others ponder whether there might have been another reason behind the modification. Was the shape intended to imitate something that was observed or remembered? Fringe theorists have suggested that the elongation was an attempt to emulate deities, celestial beings, or ancestral figures from a remote past. Others go even further, proposing that the earliest elongated skulls may not have been artificially modified at all, but rather are indicative of a now extinct hominid lineage or a forgotten race. Mainstream archaeology strongly refutes these claims. DNA analysis conducted on remains from Paracas has confirmed that they are fully human, with genetic markers consistent with ancient Andean populations. From this perspective, the practice was cultural, not biological. However, the question persists. Why would multiple geographically isolated cultures around the world engage in the same practice? What made the elongated head so universally significant? In Peru, the form was meticulously cultivated, not accidental or random. Different styles existed: flat, conical, annular. Some skulls were accompanied by facial tattooing, while others had jewelry inserted into the ears or nose. These were not simply individuals. They were living embodiments of identity, belonging, and perhaps transformation. To reshape a child's skull is to literally alter their appearance to the world. It is an irreversible declaration, one that signifies this person is distinct, chosen, set apart. Could the elongated skulls have marked the boundary between the sacred and the secular, between the rulers and the ruled, or between the earthly realm and the divine? Archaeological evidence indicates that the practice gradually declined. By the time of the Inca Empire, cranial modification was significantly less common, and subsequently it disappeared entirely, banned by Spanish colonizers who regarded it as pagan and unnatural. Today, many of the elongated skulls are housed in museum collections across Peru. Others are stored in archives, still awaiting comprehensive study. And despite decades of research, there is no definitive consensus, only a series of questions that become more numerous the further we explore. What was the experience of possessing such a head? To live a life shaped from birth by the hands of others? To visibly bear one's lineage, social class, and mythical connections within one's very bones? The desert air of Paracas remains still. The stone tombs maintain their silence, but the skulls endure, and they pose a quiet, persistent question to us, not simply about the technical process by which this was achieved, but about the underlying motivation. What dream, what belief, what ancient vision led entire civilizations to mold their very identities into something extraordinary? And what aspect of that vision have we lost? Borneo's ancient handprints. From the high deserts of Peru, where elongated skulls whisper of identity and ancient ritual, we now travel deep into a world far older. A place where stone is not carved into monuments, but painted with memory, where the jungle breathes with the rhythm of a forgotten past, and silence holds its own stories. This is Borneo. In the limestone caves of the Indonesian portion of the island, sheltered by dense forests and thick mist, lies a prehistoric gallery unlike any other. Known as the Lubang Jeriji Saleh Cave, it contains some of the oldest known hand stencils ever discovered, ghostly outlines left by human beings more than 40,000 years ago. The image is deceptively simple. A hand pressed flat against the cave wall, red pigment blown around it, leaving behind a negative imprint. Delicate, unmistakable, human. But this is no modern graffiti. Radiocarbon dating of the mineral deposits layered atop the pigment places the handprint to at least 39,900 BC, possibly older. That makes it among the oldest known artworks on Earth. Older than the cave paintings of Lascaux in France. Older than the famous hand stencils in Spain's El Castillo cave. And it raises a profound question. What compelled a person so long ago to mark their presence here? There are no names, no dates, no records, just the outline of a hand, a symbol of presence, of touch, of existence. It is not decorative, it is declarative. I was here. Who was this person? What did they see when they looked at the cave wall? Did they know their handprint would outlive them by millennia? The hand stencil is not alone. Nearby, other stencils appear, overlapping, varying in size and pigment. Some are faint, almost lost to the damp air and time's slow erosion. Alongside them are depictions of animals, warty pigs, cattle-like creatures, and scenes that suggest hunting or ritual movement. In one striking panel, a reddish-orange animal appears mid-stride, rendered with a grace that defies its age. It is estimated to be over 45,000 years old, possibly the oldest narrative scene ever painted. But the hand remains the most haunting. Mainstream archaeology interprets these stencils as part of early symbolic behavior, a reflection of cognitive evolution, the emergence of abstract thought and artistic expression, a sign that Homo sapiens, already dispersed across the islands of Southeast Asia, were developing the same symbolic systems as their distant cousins in Europe and Africa. And yet there's something more here, something that resists simple categorization. Why a hand? Why not a drawing of the body or the face? Why not tools or animals alone? Perhaps the answer lies not in what the hand represents, but in what it does. The hand reaches, touches, creates. It is the tool through which humans shape their world and communicate without words. By placing their hand on the wall, the artist, if we can call them that, was doing more than decorating. They were claiming, anchoring themselves to a specific place in time and space, forming a bridge between the self and the environment, a moment frozen in ochre and stone. Some researchers suggest these stencils may have held ritual significance, part of initiation rites or spiritual ceremonies. The act of leaving one's mark might have been a rite of passage, a way to connect with ancestors or invoke protection from unseen forces. Others wonder if the hands were offerings, prayers left in pigment, symbols of survival in an uncertain world. In certain indigenous traditions today, similar acts endure. Hands pressed in paint onto rock, not for art, but for communion, with land, with spirit, with the unbroken line of ancestry. Could the people of Borneo so long ago have shared that instinct? And then there is the silence. For tens of thousands of years, these prints lay undisturbed, hidden behind forest and stone. The person who left them could never have imagined a future where strangers from across the globe would gaze upon their mark, trying to understand what it meant. That gap between intent and interpretation is where mystery lingers. What stories were told in these caves, beneath flickering torchlight? What memories were painted before memory itself had a written form? The jungle around the caves remains thick and largely unexplored. Other chambers may still lie hidden, their walls untouched since the Ice Age. If there are more prints, more scenes, what might they show? A birth, a hunt, a death, a vision. What if these images are not just signs of art, but signs of something deeper? A worldview, a cosmology, a language not of words but of forms. We often look at these markings and see the past. But what if they were looking forward, through pigment and stone, to us? The handprint in Borneo is not a relic. It is a presence, one that asks no question and yet inspires many. Who left it? Why here? And what did they hope would remain? In a world that changes endlessly, this quiet gesture, this ancient silhouette of a hand, endures. And perhaps in that endurance, it tells us something we've forgotten. That long before history, before cities and kings and writing, someone paused, pressed their hand to stone, and chose to be remembered. The Roman surgeon's toolkit. From a handprint on a cave wall in Borneo, one of the earliest expressions of human presence, we now shift forward in time and across continents to the tiled floors and stone walls of a Roman outpost on the Adriatic coast. A place where art, science, and empire converged, and where, in a quiet corner of a ruined house, something remarkable was left behind: a surgeon's toolkit. It was discovered in the House of the Surgeon, an excavated structure in the ancient Roman city of Rimini, Italy. Buried beneath layers of debris and ash, this small room once belonged to a man of uncommon skill. Inside, archaeologists unearthed over 150 delicate instruments, some of them eerily similar to tools found in modern hospitals. Bronze scalpels with replaceable blades, bone levers, forceps, catheters, needles, probes, hooks, a speculum, even a small cupping vessel for drawing blood or extracting toxins. Every item was precisely crafted, carefully designed, tools not of war, but of healing, and they raise a simple yet profound question. How advanced was Roman medicine really? For centuries, the image of Roman healthcare has been shaped by battlefield surgery, crude herbal remedies, and bleeding rituals. But the discovery of this toolkit suggests something far more refined, more clinical, more methodical. A world where anatomy was studied, procedures were standardized, and healing was an art guided by observation. The instruments themselves are intricate. Some are hinged, others notched or ridged for grip. The scalpels in particular show signs of interchangeable parts, evidence of modular design. These are not the improvisations of a desperate healer, but the tools of a trained professional, confident in his work. Who was he? We don't know his name. No inscription identifies him. But the location of the house, near the center of town, adjacent to a forum, suggests status. He was not a traveling medic or a battlefield attendant. He was a physician with a practice, perhaps with clients from the elite. His toolkit was his livelihood, and when disaster struck, perhaps fire, flood, or sudden evacuation, he left it behind. Or did he? Was the kit hidden intentionally, buried for safekeeping, or simply forgotten, sealed away by time. What we do know is that Roman medicine drew from a wide body of knowledge: Greek, Egyptian, and earlier Mesopotamian traditions. Figures like Galen and Hippocrates left treatises on the humors, on surgery, on diet and disease. But beneath those lofty texts were the daily practices of men like the one who owned this toolkit. Quiet surgeons whose work never made it into history books, but whose tools now speak for them. The Romans understood antisepsis in rudimentary form. They boiled instruments, used wine as disinfectant. They cauterized wounds and amputated limbs. Some procedures, like cataract surgery or trepanation, were performed with surprising precision. Patients were given herbal sedatives or opium-based mixtures to dull pain. Bones were set, bladders drained, tumors excised, and all of it with tools like these. But what's most fascinating is how little some of these instruments have changed. A Roman bone lever laid beside a modern one is nearly identical. The same with surgical hooks and clamps. The understanding of anatomy, though primitive by today's standards, was practical enough to guide delicate operations. So where did this knowledge come from? Some say it was trial and error, centuries of accumulated experience passed from mentor to apprentice. Others argue that a deeper, perhaps lost tradition of anatomical study once flourished, only to be suppressed or forgotten with the fall of the empire. And still others wonder, could Roman medicine have been more advanced than we assume? Could there have been procedures or insights lost to time, hidden in texts that didn't survive, or buried with doctors whose stories were never written? Fragments of ancient medical manuals hint at specialized knowledge: wound classifications, surgical case studies, descriptions of internal organs with surprising accuracy. The remains of hospitals on valetudinaria within military forts suggest organized healthcare systems. Inscriptions and epitaphs speak of doctors skilled in opening the body and relieving suffering. Yet so much remains uncertain. Did these surgeons operate with genuine understanding, or were they guided more by experience than theory? Were these tools used to save lives, or merely prolong them under pain? And what of the surgeon himself? Was he celebrated, feared, revered? In ancient Rome, medicine held a strange position: respected, but not always trusted. Physicians were sometimes slaves, sometimes elites. Their success could earn them praise or suspicion. In the house of the surgeon, all that remains is the quiet order of the tools, lined and boxed, waiting. Perhaps he left in haste, meaning to return. Perhaps he died and no one knew what he had left behind. Or perhaps he had already passed into myth, his name fading while his instruments endured. Today, these objects rest in museums, cleaned, cataloged, displayed under glass, but they still carry the weight of human contact, of touch, of blood, of healing. They remind us that the body was always a mystery, even to those who dared to open it. And they invite us to ask, what did Roman doctors know that we've forgotten? What cures? What ideas? What knowledge was buried with them? And in the silence of their tools, silent, sharp, and strangely familiar, what stories still wait to be uncovered? Pompeii's ancient pizza. From the cold precision of the Roman surgeon's instruments, silent witnesses to the inner workings of life and death, we move just a few hundred kilometers south. And yet it feels like a world apart, to a city once vibrant with sound and color, frozen in time by catastrophe, where daily life, ordinary and extraordinary, was captured in an instant beneath layers of ash. This is Pompeii, a city stopped mid-breath in 79 AD, when the eruption of Mount Vesuvius smothered its streets, its people, and its secrets beneath a pyroclastic shroud. But what survived was not just architecture or skeletons. It was glimpses, startlingly vivid, of Roman life as it was lived. And among the frescoes and mosaics uncovered over the years, one image has recently stirred quiet curiosity. A painting, small, precise, and at its center, something familiar. A round flat bread, golden and garnished, resting on a silver tray. Around it, fruits, a pomegranate, a glass of wine. The composition is balanced, almost photographic, a still life rendered with exquisite care. And what immediately caught the attention of modern eyes was this: it looks like a pizza. This fresco was uncovered in 2023 in a domus, near the ancient city's central intersection, a structure likely belonging to a wealthy merchant. The wall on which it was painted was part of a food-serving area, perhaps once a dining room or reception space. And while Romans did not have tomatoes or mozzarella or ovens that baked the way ours do, the image resonates. A circle of bread, garnished, served as a centerpiece. But is it pizza? The answer depends on what we mean by that word. The ancient Romans certainly consumed flatbreads, round loaves baked on stones, often topped with herbs, oil, and sometimes cheese or preserved vegetables. In the satirical poetry of Horace, we find references to libum and placenta, baked doughs used in both religious offerings and casual meals. In the streets of Pompeii, fast food stalls known as thermopolia sold warm breads with various accompaniments, including olives, onions, and fermented fish sauces. So, while this fresco predates the invention of the modern Neapolitan pizza by nearly 1,800 years, it's not wrong to see a distant culinary ancestor here. But why paint it? Still life imagery, what the Romans called xenia, or hospitality scenes, was a common theme in domestic decoration. These paintings often showed bountiful trays of food, wine, and offerings, signaling abundance and generosity. But they were also symbolic, evoking themes of mortality, transience, and the pleasures of the senses. To eat was to live, to host was to be human. To serve a meal was to offer something of oneself. Could this painting then have been more than decoration? A coded message about generosity? Or perhaps an emblem of status, declaring the householder's access to fine ingredients, silverware, imported wine? Or could it have been something simpler, still, an attempt to preserve the beauty of a moment, to honor the mundane? In many ways, that is what Pompeii gives us. Not just stories of emperors and armies, but of bakers and diners, of children in kitchens, of bread on a plate. And yet, as with all things Pompeian, there is always more beneath the surface. Why was this particular food item chosen for depiction? Its simplicity is striking. It lacks the extravagance of some other xenia frescoes. No roast meats, no overflowing platters. Just a circle of bread, humble but central. Was it a regional specialty? A family favorite? A dish passed down through generations? Could it have held ceremonial significance, perhaps tied to household rituals, ancestral offerings, or seasonal feasts? Or is its power precisely in its ordinariness? A reminder that what matters most often lies in the everyday? That something as simple as bread, painted with care and preserved by disaster, can speak across millennia? And what of the unknown artist whose hand applied pigment to plaster 2,000 years ago? What did they see when they painted it? A meal? A symbol? A message? Or did they simply seek to honor the world they lived in, one plate at a time? Today, the so-called Pompeii pizza painting sits under protective glass, admired by scholars and tourists alike. It has become a point of fascination, bridging the ancient and the modern in a single quiet image, not through monuments or myths, but through food, the most human of languages. And yet the painting resists full translation. Like so much of Pompeii, it invites us in, then steps back, leaving space for wonder. Was this the world's first pizza? Or was it something more elusive? An echo of a moment lost in ash, found again in fragments. Perhaps the deeper truth is not in the meal itself, but in the hand that painted it, the wall that bore it, and the city that, even in destruction, refused to be forgotten. The cave of the painted hands. From the quiet, still life preserved on a Pompeian wall, where a round loaf of bread becomes a symbol of hospitality and memory, we now travel far from the stone forms of Rome, far even from the cities of the ancient world, south across oceans and continents to the windswept plateaus of Patagonia, at the edge of the known world. Here, among barren cliffs and shifting light, is a cave unlike any other. Cueva de las Manos, the cave of the painted hands. Tucked into a steep canyon along the Pinturas River in southern Argentina, this remote rock shelter hides a gallery that dates back over 9,000 years. The name says it all. Its walls are covered, layer upon layer, with human handprints. Hundreds of them, red, black, white, ochre, mostly left hands, mostly small, as though painted by young people or women, or perhaps by all. children, elders, generations. The first time you see it, it's unsettling. Not because it's grotesque or violent, but because it's personal. These are not symbolic figures, not stylized gods or animals. These are human presences, unmistakable and immediate, not drawn, not imagined, pressed. Archaeologists believe the prints were made by blowing pigment through a hollow reed or bone tube, using the hand as a stencil. The result is a negative image, an absence made visible, a silent declaration, a gesture that echoes across time. But what did it mean? Was it a ritual of coming of age, a rite of passage, a way to mark territory, ancestry, belonging? Or were these prints a kind of communication? Names without words, signatures written in dust and breath. The cave doesn't offer easy answers. Alongside the handprints are depictions of guanacos, graceful, camel-like animals native to the region, along with hunting scenes, zigzags, and abstract shapes. These are older than the handprints, suggesting the cave's function evolved over time. Perhaps it was once a hunting shrine, then a gathering place, then something more sacred. Still, even now, standing inside the cave, surrounded by dozens of overlapping hands, there's a strange feeling. Not that you are looking at the past, but that the past is looking at you. Who were these people? They lived before metal, before agriculture, before the great civilizations of the Andes. They were hunter-gatherers, surviving in one of the most isolated and unforgiving landscapes on Earth. And yet they created something enduring, something that still pulses with human intention. Archaeological studies have dated the earliest handprints to around 7,300 BC, with newer layers added over centuries. Some suggest the cave was used for over 3,000 years. That's longer than most civilizations last. Entire belief systems came and went. Yet here in this cave, the hands kept appearing. Why? What drew people back? Was it a sacred place, a site of memory, a cosmic threshold? The repetition of the image, the hand, always the hand, suggests it meant more than mere decoration. It was a symbol, yes, but also a ritual, a performance of identity, of connection, and perhaps of longing. Many of the hands show signs of physical difference, missing fingers, bent joints. Some interpret this as injury, others as gesture, a code, a language. Were certain finger positions meant to signal clan, rank, or story? Or were they simply the marks of people who lived hard lives? Mainstream archaeology has theories. The cave may have been a site of shamanic ritual, a place to commune with ancestors or spirits. The hands may have been a way to assert continuity, to say, I am part of this land, and this land is part of me. But the cave resists final interpretation. Like the oldest myths, its truth lies not in fact, but in atmosphere, in the stillness between ideas. And perhaps that's the point. The cave of the painted hands is not about what we know. It's about what we remember and what we choose to leave behind. To press a hand against a stone wall and surround it with pigment is to declare existence. Not loudly, not boastfully, but quietly, permanently. There is no ego in these hands, no vanity, just presence, a moment, a breath, a decision to endure. And that leaves us with questions that science can't fully answer. Were these hands reaching forward or reaching back? Were they calling the spirits of the land, or were they trying to speak to us? What would it mean to add one more hand, to place your palm next to theirs and feel, even for a moment, that across 9,000 years, someone once stood where you now stand and chose to be remembered? The cave offers no reply, only silence and hands waiting. Norway's hidden Viking ship. From the windswept cave walls of Patagonia, where hands reach out to us from the edge of prehistory, we now travel north to a land of long twilight, black soil, and silent stones. A place where the past does not rise in ruins, but lies buried, waiting beneath fields that seem empty. This is Gjellestad in southeastern Norway, a patch of farmland near the Oslofjord, where for centuries nothing remarkable had been seen. Just grass, tilled earth, and the passing of seasons. Until in 2018, a ground-penetrating radar survey revealed something extraordinary. A ship, long, elegant, hidden beneath just half a meter of soil. It was not the remains of a harbor or a coastal wreck. This vessel was deliberately buried in land, beneath a mound that had since eroded away. A Viking ship placed beneath the earth over 1,000 years ago, not to sail seas, but to ferry someone into the afterlife. Roughly 65 ft in length, its outline emerged from the radar scans with eerie clarity. The central keel, the ribs, the tapering ends, all of it preserved in shadow, invisible from above, yet unmistakable. It was a burial, the kind reserved for nobility or someone of profound significance. Who was laid to rest inside? That remains unknown. No body has yet been found, but the ship was accompanied by traces of longhouses, feasting halls, and other burial mounds, suggesting this was once a sacred site, a Viking-age complex of power, ritual, and memory. What kind of person was granted a ship for a tomb? In Viking culture, such burials were rare, reserved for kings, chieftains, or warriors of high esteem. And yet these ships were more than just symbols of status. They were metaphors for life, for death, and for the voyage between the two. To be buried in a ship was to continue the journey, to cross into the unknown with dignity, with purpose, with honor. The ship beneath the Yellowstad field speaks to that belief. It is not merely a grave, it is a declaration, and yet this one lay hidden for over a millennium. Why was it forgotten, concealed, or simply consumed by time and weather? We know that many Viking burial mounds were destroyed during Christianization, flattened, reused, or quietly erased. Could this have been part of that sweeping shift? A memory intentionally buried? Archaeologists moved quickly. By 2020, a full excavation was underway. What they found beneath the soil was delicate, partially decayed wood, iron rivets, outlines of structure. The ship had suffered from rot, but its shape endured, impressed into the soil like a negative image. A ghost, iron nails, a possible grave chamber, fragments of weapons and gear, but no treasure, no body. Had the grave been looted, or was the absence itself intentional? Speculation began to grow. Could this be the grave of a Viking queen? Some burials of high-status women have included ships, weapons, and symbols of command. Or was this the resting place of a king whose name no longer survives? Perhaps a sea raider, a poet warrior, a leader of a forgotten tribe. And if so, why here? Yellowstad is not remote, but it is quiet, tucked inland near the ancient roadways of the Østfold region, close to rivers, close to trade routes, a land of transitions. Perhaps that's what drew them to be buried not in isolation, but at the crossroads of movement and memory. The ship rests within what was once a mound, an artificial hill raised by many hands, meant to be seen from afar. These mounds were both monuments and messages. They told travelers, someone of consequence lies here. They shaped the landscape with a meaning, and then, over time, they vanished. Could there be more beneath these fields? Already radar has revealed other structures, longhouses, enclosures, outbuildings. Was this a royal estate, a ceremonial center, a place of pilgrimage or seasonal gathering? Or could it be something even older, even deeper? Some theorists have proposed that Viking burial mounds were often placed atop sites of earlier ritual significance, pre-Viking sanctuaries, Bronze Age temples, or Neolithic settlements. A layering of sacred space, one culture atop another. If so, the ship burial at Yellowstad may be only the most recent layer in a story stretching back thousands of years. And what of the ship itself? Its design is consistent with Viking-era construction: curved prow, shallow draft, clinker-built hull. These were ships made for both rivers and sea, for exploration, trade, and conquest. Some bore warriors across the North Sea. Others brought settlers to Iceland, Greenland, even North America. But this one went nowhere except downward into the earth. Its final voyage not over water, but into myth. Today the ship has been removed, conserved, studied. But its presence still haunts the field where it lay, and the questions remain. Who was buried here? Why was their story lost? And how many more ships still rest, hidden beneath quiet ground? Mute testaments to lives once lived at the edge of the known world. The field is still, the sky is wide, and beneath the soil, history waits. Not lost, but sleeping, waiting for the right hands, the right eyes to find it again. The Singing Pyramid of Chichen Itza. From the green pastures of Norway, where a Viking ship once slumbered beneath the earth, we now move to the sun-soaked jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula. Here vines twist through limestone ruins, and beneath the dense canopy, the past rises not as a whisper, but as a song. This is Chichen Itza, one of the most celebrated and enigmatic cities of the ancient Maya. Its towering step pyramid, known as El Castillo, or the Temple of Kukulkan, stands at the heart of the complex, with 4 sides of 91 steps each, plus a single top platform. The pyramid contains 365 steps in total, mirroring the solar calendar. Built between the 8th and 12th centuries AD, it reflects both architectural genius and cosmic symbolism. But there's more to this pyramid than its visual majesty. There is a sound, a phenomenon not carved into stone, but woven into the air itself. If you stand at the base of the staircase and clap your hands, a short, sharp sound, the echo that returns is unexpected. It does not mimic the original clap. Instead, it chirps, a descending tone, almost bird-like, ringing through the plaza like a hidden voice. Researchers and visitors alike have described the echo as resembling the call of the resplendent quetzal, a sacred bird in Mesoamerican mythology. Its feathers adorn royalty, its image symbolized the gods, and its song, rare, elusive, was believed to carry divine resonance. But how is it possible that stone steps, placed centuries ago without modern technology, can mimic a bird's call so precisely? Some argue it's intentional, that the Maya, masters of astronomy and mathematics, were also deeply attuned to acoustics. The design of El Castillo, with its steep staircases, broad landings, and narrow corridors, could act like a sound filter, modifying and shaping echoes in specific ways. But if true, that would mean the Maya weren't just building to the sky, they were composing for the air. Did they test acoustics as they built, adjusting the angles and spacing to achieve the perfect echo? Did priests use this effect during rituals, clapping or speaking? So the voice of Kukulkan would seem to answer from above. Or could the sound have had a practical function, announcing processions, signaling events, directing crowds? Some archaeologists remain cautious. They point out that echo patterns may be coincidental, the byproduct of geometry and material, that many ancient structures produce strange echoes, and only in retrospect are they assigned meaning. After all, limestone is a natural sound reflector, and steps, by nature, create wave interference. But then again, the Maya were not accidental builders. From the alignment of pyramids to solstices, to the precise orientation of ball courts to cardinal directions, their cities were designed with purpose. And in a culture where sound, vision, and myth were inseparable, the idea of architectural acoustics is not far-fetched, especially when one considers that Chichen Itza's acoustics don't stop with El Castillo. At the Great Ball Court, a whisper from one end can be heard clearly at the other, over 500 ft away. Shouted speech bounces off the curved walls and echoes multiple times. Could these sounds have amplified ritual speeches or created a heightened sensory experience for those in attendance? And if the ball court speaks and the pyramid sings, what else in Chichen Itza listens? Could other buildings, now ruined or overgrown, have contained their own acoustic signatures? Did priests, astronomers, and rulers understand the power of sound in ritual space? More intriguingly, did the people believe that the gods themselves spoke through echo? The Temple of Kukulkan was associated with descent, especially during the equinox, when sunlight casts a serpent-like shadow down the pyramid's northern balustrade. On these days, as the serpent of light slithers downward, the sound of the chirping quetzal might also have been summoned. Light and sound together, announcing the return of the god, a spectacle not just for the eyes but for the soul. Yet the mystery remains. How did the Maya discover this effect? Was it trial and error, a moment of inspiration, or part of a larger, now lost body of knowledge? One that fused architecture with music, religion with resonance? Some fringe theorists have suggested even more speculative ideas, that the pyramid was used in altered state rituals where sound played a role in spiritual transport, that the echo was perceived as a voice from the underworld or the sky, or that the temple encoded not just time and space, but vibration. Mainstream scholars remain grounded in evidence, but they agree on one thing. The chirping echo is real, measurable, reproducible, and profoundly strange. What it meant, though, what it was, we may never fully know. And perhaps that's what gives it power. To stand at the base of the Temple of Kukulkan, surrounded by jungle and stone, and hear a bird song echo from stonework laid 1,000 years ago, is to be reminded that the past was not silent. It spoke, it sang, it echoed. And somewhere between architecture and atmosphere, between science and spirit, the voice of the Maya still lingers. What else did they build into their world? Not to be seen, but to be heard. Gold in the skull. From the echoes of Chichen Itza, where stone sings with the voice of a sacred bird, we descend into a different kind of silence. A silence not shaped by architecture or air, but by the stillness of a human skull, cracked, cut, healed, and inlaid with gold. This is not myth, it is archaeology. In the highlands of Peru and Bolivia, and across regions once touched by the great Andean civilizations, the Inca, the Wari, the Tiwanaku, archaeologists have uncovered something remarkable and unsettling. Human skulls dating back hundreds and even thousands of years show unmistakable signs of ancient brain surgery. The procedure is called trepanation, the deliberate removal of a piece of the skull, exposing the brain beneath. But among these finds, a few are different. In some, the trepanned area isn't simply left open or covered by scar tissue. Instead, it is capped with thin sheets of gold. Thin, malleable, shaped to the wound like a crown over an old scar. How could this be? To perform cranial surgery today requires sterile tools, anesthesia, and specialized knowledge. Yet here in pre-Columbian South America, we find evidence of survival. Bone regrowth, smooth edges, healed fractures. In some cases, the patients live for years after the operation. The oldest trepanned skulls in the Andes date back to at least 1000 BC, with the practice continuing into the Inca period and possibly longer. Techniques varied: scraping, cutting, drilling, and each left its own signature. But the goal was always the same: relieve pressure, treat injury, perhaps even alter consciousness. What's most astonishing is the survival rate. Studies suggest that in some Andean cultures, over 80% of trepanned individuals survive the operation, a success rate that rivals or even exceeds some Civil War-era surgeries thousands of years later. These were not crude hacks. They were procedures performed with care, precision, and likely with a deep understanding of the body. But the golden inlays, those remain rare and mysterious. A handful of skulls found in Peru, in elite burials or sacred sites, show these shimmering inserts. Not all are clearly medical, some may be symbolic. Others show signs of both injury and healing. The use of gold raises the stakes of interpretation. Was the gold functional, meant to protect the wound? Or was it symbolic, marking the healed as sacred, blessed, or transformed? And what kind of knowledge did this require? The Andean peoples valued gold not for its economic worth, but for its spiritual resonance. It was the sweat of the sun, a material tied to divine essence, light, power. To place it inside the body, especially within the head, was no small gesture. It suggests not only craftsmanship, but theology, a belief that gold could heal or connect. Could these patients have been shamans, warriors, prophets, or were they wounded leaders restored with gold to signify their rebirth? Protection in a medical sense? And yet its placement over a healing wound suggests more than decoration. Was it a seal against evil spirits, a marker for the gods, or something entirely outside our categories? There are no written records to explain the practice. The Inca left behind knotted cords, not scripts. Their predecessors left art, architecture, and legend, but not language as we know it. And so the gold rests mute, offering more questions than answers. Even without the gold, the scale of ancient brain surgery in the Andes is staggering. Thousands of skulls bear the marks. No single civilization, no isolated healer. This was widespread, institutionalized, taught, preserved. In one burial, archaeologists discovered tools beside the trepanned remains. obsidian blades, tweezers, cloth. Evidence not of improvisation, but of a medical kit, a profession, perhaps even a guild. And in this landscape of mountains, spirits, and ancestors, healing the head may have meant more than healing the body. It may have meant restoring the soul. We tend to imagine ancient surgery as brutal, desperate, painful. But what if it wasn't? What if these procedures were performed not in terror but in ritual? What if the operating space was a temple, the surgeon a priest, the patient willing? There are no definitive answers, only the quiet hum of gold beneath soil, the healed bone, the silent tools, and the growing awareness that those who came before us, long before antibiotics, long before scalpels, had found ways to reach into the most fragile part of the body and bring someone back. So we are left with questions. Who were these surgeons, unrecorded and unnamed? How did they learn to open the skull without killing? Why did they place gold where others placed nothing? And what knowledge have we lost between the temples of the Andes and the textbooks of today? In the end, the skull speaks not loudly, not clearly, but with the language of survival, of mystery, of hands that once opened a living head and left behind a mark of light. The tomb of the silver pharaoh. From the glint of ancient gold shaped to heal fractured skulls, we now descend into another burial. One far more intact, yet wrapped in an enigma just as profound. Not in the mountains of the Andes this time, but deep beneath the desert sands of Lower Egypt, in a place few expected to find untouched, in a tomb that, unlike its golden counterparts, shimmered with something colder, something rarer, the tomb of the silver pharaoh. It was 1939 and Egyptologist Pierre Montet was excavating at Tanis, once a capital city in the Nile Delta, buried beneath layers of mud and centuries of flooding. What he uncovered would stun the world. The only intact royal burial ever discovered in Egypt, even more complete than Tutankhamun's. But the name of this pharaoh is largely unknown. His name was Susenes III, a 21st dynasty ruler who reigned around 1047 to 1001 BC, in a time when Egypt's power was fractured, its influence dimming, and its monuments slowly being forgotten by time. And yet his tomb told another story. Stone sarcophagi stacked like nesting dolls, glimmering artifacts, beaded collars, ceremonial weapons, intricate funerary masks, all perfectly preserved. But it was the coffin itself that stood apart, crafted not of gold, like that of Tutankhamun, but of solid silver, a rarity in ancient Egypt where gold was far more common and silver had to be imported, often from the Near East or even further afield. To encase a body in silver was not just a sign of wealth, it was a message, a mystery. Why silver? The ancient Egyptians associated gold with the flesh of the gods, but silver, rarer and more elusive, was thought to represent the bones of the gods, particularly those of the moon deity. Was Susenes I aligning himself with lunar symbolism? Was his burial meant to evoke a different kind of eternity? And if so, what did he hope to become in death? Unlike the Valley of the Kings, where tombs were ransacked in antiquity, the necropolis of Tanis remained hidden under layers of mudbrick, debris, and Nile silt. It was protected not by guards or curses, but by obscurity. Forgotten by robbers, bypassed by looters, it sat undisturbed for nearly 3,000 years. Inside, Montet found dazzling objects: solid silver bracelets, lapis lazuli scarabs, canopic jars of alabaster, inlays of turquoise and faience, and at the heart of it all, Susenes III himself, wrapped in linen, his face covered with a haunting silver funerary mask, the eyes inlaid with obsidian and black stone, unblinking, eternal. But something about the tomb didn't add up. Susenes I ruled during a turbulent time. His dynasty held sway in the north, while rival high priests of Amun controlled the south. It was not an age of empire or grand monuments. It was an age of fragmentation, of diplomacy and quiet maneuvering. So how did a king from such a troubled period come to be buried with riches rivaling the most famous pharaohs? Was Susenes III more powerful than the records suggest? Or was this an elaborate attempt to project divine status in a time of national decline? Some scholars argue that Tanis was meant to mirror the glory of earlier capitals, its tombs copying the style of Thebes, its kings echoing the grandeur of past dynasties. Susanna I, they say, was trying to preserve continuity, to root himself in the legacy of kingship even as Egypt drifted into political shadow. But others see something stranger. Among the artifacts were several non-Egyptian influences. Levantine motifs, imported materials, techniques not native to the Nile. Was Susanus fostering hidden international alliances? Could his wealth have come not from Egypt, but from trade or tribute from afar? More provocatively, was his silver coffin a symbol of something secret, a ritual identity that we no longer understand? The tomb itself was compact, built in layers with unusual architectural features. It suggested both haste and precision. There was no grand descending corridor like in the Valley of the Kings. No elaborate murals. Instead, it was a chamber of containment, tight, sealed, as if it wasn't just a burial, but a vessel designed to hold something in or keep something out. And what of Susen's eye himself? His body was well preserved, thanks in part to the arid conditions, but also to careful embalming. Teeth worn, bones aged, a man who lived long and ruled longer. His burial said he was a god. His mass said he was immortal. But his name never rose to the level of legend. Why? Why did history forget him, even while the earth preserved him? And what else lies beneath Tanis, still buried beneath mud and memory? Today, the treasures of the Silver Pharaoh reside mostly in museums. The tomb has been excavated, documented, studied, but the aura remains, not because of curses or myths, but because it is one of those rare places where the veil between mystery and clarity feels deliberately thin. Susenes. I was not the most famous, not the most feared, but he may have been the most carefully buried. And in the shimmer of silver, in the quiet breath of a sealed chamber, we are left with a final question. Did he succeed, not just in preserving his body, but in shaping how he would be remembered? Or was the silver merely a mirror, reflecting not just a king's power, but our own inability to ever truly see the full story of a life long gone? The oldest mark. From the cool gleam of a silver sarcophagus in the depths of a forgotten royal tomb, we now travel even deeper. Beyond empires, beyond kings, beyond recorded memory, to a time before cities, before writing, before the world was divided into history and myth. We arrive at the mouth of a cave in northern Spain, nestled in the rugged hills of Cantabria. Its name is El Castillo, the castle, but its walls hold something far older than any fortress. Inside, past the narrow passageways and silent chambers, a single mark waits in darkness. A red dot no larger than a palm, pressed against the stone more than 40,000 years ago. This is the oldest known painted symbol created by a human hand. A single circle of ochre pigment applied with intention, not the product of erosion or accident, but of choice. It predates the pyramids by tens of thousands of years. It predates the earliest alphabets. It may even predate the arrival of modern Homo sapiens in the region, raising the possibility that it was created by Neanderthals. Just a red dot. But what does it mean? The cave itself is a vast canvas of prehistoric art. Discovered in the early 20th century, El Castillo contains hand stencils, abstract signs, and animal figures drawn in charcoal and ochre. Horses, deer, bison, ghost-like forms that ripple across the stone, frozen in movement. But the dots, especially the oldest, stand apart. In 2012, researchers used uranium-thorium dating techniques on the calcite layers above the pigment. The results were astonishing. One red disc, possibly a simple fingertip impression, was dated to at least 40,800 BC. That makes it the oldest cave painting yet discovered in Europe and possibly the world. And yet, it says nothing. Or does it? What is a dot? It is a beginning, a point of origin, a mark that says, I was here. It may be the first sentence in the book of human expression, a deliberate gesture, silent but enduring. Why did someone in the depths of a cave, surrounded by darkness and silence, place this mark? Was it a message to others, a symbol of territory, a ritual act, or simply the human desire to reach out into the unknown and leave something behind? Some archaeologists suggest that the dots were part of a counting system or lunar calendar. Others believe they marked sacred spots within the cave, tied to rituals of hunting, fertility, or death. In some sites, similar markings align with natural rock formations or echo chambers, suggesting a connection between sound, space, and meaning. But the truth is, we don't know. We don't know the name of the person who painted it. We don't know what they believed or feared or hoped. We only know that they stood in this place, deep underground, and chose to make a mark, and that mark survived. If the painting truly predates modern humans in Europe, it may have been created by Neanderthals, a species once considered incapable of symbolic thought. But recent discoveries challenge that assumption. Neanderthals buried their dead, they made tools, they used pigments, and perhaps they painted. If so, the dot becomes even more profound. It would mean that art did not begin with us, that the urge to express, to leave a sign, runs deeper than language or civilization. It is not merely cultural, it is biological, innate, a flame carried across species, across time. And what of the red pigment? Ochre, an iron-rich mineral, was among the first materials used by prehistoric artists. It was ground, mixed with water or fat, and applied with fingers, reeds, or hollowed bones. Its color resembles blood, fire, clay. In many ancient cultures, red was linked to life, to birth, to power. To paint in red was not just to decorate, but to declare. So was this dot a symbol of life, a gesture of defiance, a prayer? Or was it all of these and something more? Some researchers suggest the act of descending into the cave was itself a ritual. These places were not shelters. They were chosen, hidden, sacred. To enter was to cross a threshold between light and dark, surface and depth, living and spirit. And in that space, a mark was made, perhaps not to be seen, but to be remembered. And yet here we are, tens of thousands of years later, still looking, still wondering what that dot meant, what it meant to be human at the very beginning of time. Was it the first step in a journey that would lead to kings and temples, to silver coffins and stone pyramids, to alphabets and satellites? Or was it something we've forgotten how to understand? Today, the red dot of El Castillo is protected behind barriers. Tourists cannot touch it. Flash photography is forbidden. The air is monitored to prevent damage. But the mystery remains untouched, not because it resists explanation, but because perhaps it never needed one. A single red dot left by a hand in the dark, still glowing in the stone, still asking, what does it mean to leave a mark when no one may ever know why you did?